Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Fiona G. Moments ago, the White House touts President Trump's first 1 month of achievements. They also announced Trump's upcoming meetings with foreign leaders. The full Senate set to vote on Kash Patel's confirmation today. At least one GOP senator voicing disapproval for President Trump's FBI director nominee. Longtime Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky announces today he will not run for re-election in 2026. Vice President JD Vance kicks off the general session of CPAC this morning. Our Washington correspondent Martinez will bring more. The U.S. Special Envoy to Ukraine is in Kyiv today. The outcome of his meeting with President Zelenskyy. Surviving a plane crash can be complicated. Following a series of major plane crashes, experts explain how survivors can process the trauma.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
The White House recapped President Trump's first month in office. Here's Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt earlier today.
The president has already signed 73 executive orders. That is more than double the number signed by Joe Biden and more than quadruple the number signed by Barack Obama over the same period. These executive orders have ended burdensome regulations, sealed the border, unleashed our domestic energy sector, eliminated divisive DEI from our federal government, stopped the weaponization of government, cut waste, fraud, and abuse, reinstituted America First trade and foreign policies, and ultimately restored common sense. The president also signed the Lake and Riley Act into law, which ensures ICE will detain illegal aliens arrested or charged with theft or violence. As of today, the Senate has already confirmed 18 cabinet-level nominees, which is more than at this point under the Obama administration in 2009, and more than double the pace of the Biden administration in 2021. And today, we expect Kash Patel to be confirmed as the next director of the FBI. We are proud to announce that the president will host his first official cabinet meeting here at the White House next Wednesday, February 26th. In just 4 weeks, President Trump has already hosted the leaders of Israel, Japan, Jordan, and India. And next Monday, the president will host France's President Emmanuel Macron. And on Thursday, the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer will visit the White House as well.
National Security Advisor Michael Waltz highlighted Trump's breakthroughs in foreign policy.
Over the last month, just to name a few, I had the honor of sitting in the Oval Office as President Trump spoke with President Putin and then immediately spoke with President Zelenskyy. And both of them said only President Trump could bring both sides to the table and only President Trump could stop the horrific fighting that has been going on now for the better part of 4 years, and that only President Trump could drive the world back to peace. Both of those leaders said that in back-to-back calls. And of course, we just had our historic talks mediated by our good friends and partners, Saudi Arabia. We give great thanks to Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman for hosting and sat down for the first time in years with the Russians and talked about a path forward with peace. On top of that, and one of the things that led to that was the tremendous confidence building measure that we had with the release of Mark Fogel.
CPAC 2025 kicks off with a keynote discussion with Vice President JD Vance at the National Harbor in Maryland today. Our NTD correspondent Martinez is live at the event. Louise, good afternoon. Tell us what the main takeaways today were from the opening and the Vice President's comments.
Of course. Well, first of all, very interesting. Before JD Vance took to the stage, Mercedes and Matt Schlapp, the heads of the CPAC organization, talked about 3 resolutions that CPAC International Summit that was hosted yesterday signed unanimously. One to counter the malign influence of the Chinese Communist Party worldwide, one to show support for Israel against the threats in the Middle East, and a third one fighting globalism. So, of course, these are the CPAC delegations from all over the world that are gathered here at the National Harbor. Right after that brief introduction, then Mercedes Schlapp sat down with Vice President JD Vance to give us an official start to CPAC 2025. One of the main topics of discussion was the economy, and interestingly enough, Vice President JD Vance not only talked about that it would take time for the Trump administration to bring prices down as promised during the campaign trail, but also mentioned how pivotal the reconciliation bill and that process in Congress will be to the administration's intentions of lowering prices. Let's listen to what Vice President JD Vance had to say about that.
And I actually talked to the president about this yesterday, and he said to me, look, it's very rare that you can get 2 reconciliation bills done in one Congress, which is why he thinks we've got to do a lot with that one big, beautiful bill, that first reconciliation package that we're going to get through the House and the Senate.
So that was Vice President JD Vance commenting on how President Trump has already weighed in and chosen the House's version of the budget resolution to move forward with this reconciliation process. But another subject of discussion during this brief interaction between Vice President JD Vance and Mercedes Schlapp was JD Vance's speech at the Munich Security Conference. The Vice President actually redoubled on his message that European allies should have shared values with Americans and not censor free speech. Let's listen.
That friendship is based on shared values. You do not have shared values if you're jailing people for saying we should close down our border. You don't have shared values if you cancel elections because you don't like the result, and that happened in Romania. You do not have shared values if you're so afraid of your own people that you silence them and shut them up. So let's have shared values. Let's defend democracy. Let's have free expression, not just in the United States, but all over the Western world. That is the path to strong alliances in Europe.
So Vice President JD Vance also took the opportunity to take a victory lap, because let's remember today is February 20th. That is the first month since President Trump has been in office. So of course, JD Vance went over a list of the accomplishments that the administration has made since getting to the White House. He also made a quick quip to CNN saying that President Trump had signed as many executive orders as CNN had viewers. So a lot of humor, a lot of celebration and jubilation here at CPAC 2025.
Absolutely. And Luis, give us a forecast. What can we expect from the rest of the first day?
Well, later today, we're going to hear from Senator Rick Scott. He's hosting a panel on the threat of the Chinese Communist Party's influence internationally. We will also hear from Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, Senator Ted Cruz, Senator Jim Banks, and we're also expecting a special appearance by Elon Musk. It was announced earlier today by Matt Schlapp. We still don't know what time that will be, but stay tuned for any and all updates on CPAC 2025.
Luis, thank you for the update. Looks like a packed crowd behind you. Thank you. And President Donald Trump's nominee for Deputy Secretary of Transportation said regulators need to take a more aggressive approach towards Boeing. Trump expressed his own frustration with the plane maker today.
No, I'm not happy with Boeing. It takes them a long time to do. Air Force One, we gave that contract out a long time ago. It was a fixed price contract, and I'm not happy with the fact that it's taken so long. And we may do something else. We may go and buy a plane or get a plane or something, but I'm not happy with the fact that it's taken Boeing so long. There's no excuse for it. I would not consider Airbus over Boeing, no. But I could buy one that was used and convert it. I could buy one from another country, perhaps, or get one from another country. So we're looking at other alternatives because it's taken Boeing too long.
Trump's comments came as nominee Steve Bradbury testified today before the Senate Commerce Committee. Last January, former President Joe Biden's FAA chief Mike Whitaker imposed a 38 planes per month production cap on Boeing. Last month, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy told Congress that the plane maker needed, quote, tough love. Duffy added that he would keep the cap on production of Boeing 737 MAX planes in place. The department imposed the output limit after a mid-air panel blowout last year. Duffy plans to travel to Seattle with acting FAA Administrator Chris Rocheleau to meet with Boeing in March. And Republican Senator Mitch McConnell announced today that he will not be seeking re-election next year. McConnell, the longest-serving Senate party leader in U.S. history, chose his 83rd birthday to share his decision not to run for another term in Kentucky and to retire when his current term ends. He made the announcement when he was addressing colleagues in a speech on the Senate floor.
7 times, my fellow Kentuckians have sent me to the Senate. Every day in between, I've been humbled by the trust they placed in me to do their business right here. Representing our Commonwealth has been the honor of a lifetime. I will not seek this honor an 8th time. My current term in the Senate will be my last.
McConnell, first elected in 1984, intends to serve the remainder of his term ending in January 2027. The Kentuckian has dealt with a series of medical episodes in recent years, including injuries sustained from falls and times when his face briefly froze while he was speaking. His dramatic announcement comes almost 1 year after his decision to quit his leadership post after the 2024 election. South Dakota Senator John Thune, a top McConnell deputy, replaced him as majority leader. Keeping on the Senate, it is voting on FBI Director nominee Kash Patel's confirmation today. He just passed the final procedural vote. The procedural vote to end debate was 51-47. Patel cleared the Senate Judiciary Committee last week by a vote of 12-10 along party lines. That was after Democrats on the committee delayed his vote for a week. A half-dozen Democrats on the committee gathered outside FBI headquarters today before the vote. They spoke out against Patel and made a last-ditch plea to derail his confirmation. Now, if confirmed, Patel will serve a 10-year term. President Trump's nominee for Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, just cleared a major hurdle to Senate confirmation. The Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions advanced her nomination. That vote was 12-11, strictly along party lines. McMahon's nomination will head to the full Senate for consideration now. She is one of only 4 cabinet picks yet to be confirmed. Republican senators support her willingness to dismantle the Department of Education, while Democrats oppose her for that position. And we're keeping our eye on the Hill. Joining us now live is attorney and conservative activist Keith Gross. Keith, thank you for joining us. Before we get into any of the confirmation hearings, I want to get your take on what we heard from Senator Mitch McConnell today announcing he's not running for re-election. Now, we're already seeing some contenders coming out in Kentucky. We're seeing former State Attorney General Daniel Cameron. He announced his candidacy already. Republican Congressman Andy Barr is interested too. How do you see that race going about in Kentucky?
You know, I think the people of Kentucky are likely relieved that they will be able to replace a longtime incumbent. I think the general idea of many Americans is that we shouldn't be ruled by the same people year after year. That's why we should be replacing incumbents. And someone like Mitch McConnell should have retired a long time ago. Especially in recent years, what we've seen from Mitch McConnell and many of the other so-called uniparty Republicans has been a departure from the ideas of small government and a willingness to just spend unlimited amounts of money and run up our national debt. So I, for one, will be glad to see a change there.
It's going to be an interesting race for sure. Let's talk about Kash Patel now. We're still waiting on the outcome of that full Senate floor vote, rather. But let's talk about during his confirmation hearing. You know, he had some interesting points to make, mostly in support of Trump's policies, but he did mention that he doesn't support the commutation of sentences for violent January 6th participants. What's your take on that?
Well, my take on that is it's the president's prerogative. You know, the idea that the president is the head of the executive branch is well outlined in our Constitution. And most of the objections that I'm hearing from the Democrat side with respect to the confirmation of Kash Patel is that they're very concerned that he will be loyal to Trump. Well, that's exactly what he's supposed to do. Every president deserves to have a staff that will be loyal to him and will execute the mission, you know, within the boundaries of our constitutional government. But the Democrats are objecting, I think, because they're afraid their corruption is going to be uncovered. And they're afraid that they will be held accountable for their weaponization of government over these last 4 years.
And so what do you think the first action Patel is going to take in office if he indeed is confirmed?
You know, if I were in his shoes, the first thing I would do is a review of staff, because there are a lot of people on the staff there who have been doing the bidding of the Biden administration for the last 4 years, selectively targeting conservatives for increased levels of law enforcement, surveillance, and prosecution. It's time to clean house.
So are you expecting more potential staff cuts to come once he's in office?
Absolutely. That is what we should expect. We should see a reformation. We should see rooting out corruption, rooting out people who have a partisan tilt to the way they enforce the laws. You know, our Constitution guarantees equal protection under the law. And that's not what we've seen for the last 4 years. We saw people who peacefully walked across on the Capitol steps on January 6th, prosecuted and jailed for years. And at the same time, we saw people burning down cities for the BLM movement go unprosecuted. We've seen liberals across the cities in the United States releasing criminals, violent criminals often, with no consequences or no bail. I think it's time for us to start taking law and order seriously and enforcing laws fairly.
And so with all of these sweeping downsizing efforts from the Trump administration we're seeing for all the other departments, how heavily do you expect the FBI to be hit with this? And what do you say about those criticisms that we're hearing that cutting down on the FBI will threaten national security?
You know, I don't believe that cutting down on the FBI would threaten national security. I think we should have a lot smaller federal government than we currently have. Look, the United States is $37 trillion in debt already. We can't afford this much federal government, and we don't need this much federal government. With respect to law enforcement, we should have some federal law enforcement that focuses on national security priorities and other things that are best served at the national level. But 90% of the mission accomplished by federal law enforcement could be and should be accomplished at the local and state level.
And so with the amount of debate that we're seeing against Kash Patel during his whole confirmation process, could we expect further pushback that slows his goals down once he's confirmed, or if he's confirmed?
We should absolutely expect that there will be ongoing resistance to anything the Trump administration does. We're seeing it already with a litany of lawsuits being filed, which have no constitutional basis for the most part. Our Constitution gives the full power of the executive branch to the president himself. And we've got judges that are trying to substitute their judgment for the president and override the president's Article 2 broad authorities to govern his own branch. I have no doubt that within the FBI, there will be people who try to get in the way of Kash Patel. But this time is different. This time, what we have is a Trump administration who is backing the idea of full authority for the executive branch vested into the president. And we're going to see a president that backs Kash up when he goes to fire these bad actors.
Now, speaking of reforming all of these government departments, of course, a big one would be the Department of Education. I think it's interesting that we still haven't yet seen that confirmation vote for Linda McMahon just yet.
Yeah, I think we're going to see continuing obstruction to anything that the Democrats don't like. And, that's part of the way our government works. Unfortunately, Democrats can't see the reality and the truth, which is that the Department of Education spends hundreds of billions of dollars every year. And since the inception of that Department of Education at the federal level, the cost of education per student has gone up dramatically. The quality of education, the test scores, they've gone down. And so the American people are not getting a good value. It comes back to the idea of a constitutional government that does a limited number of things at the federal level, with most things being done at the state level. Education is one of those things that should certainly be done at the state and local level, where parents can set priorities for how their children are educated.
Kyiv, last question for you here. Caroline Leavitt, we just heard her earlier today saying that the president will be holding his first cabinet meeting next Wednesday. Of course, we just mentioned Linda McMahon, not confirmed yet. In total, 4 cabinet positions still unconfirmed. My question for you here, can we expect them all to be confirmed before then? And what are they going to talk about during this meeting, do you think?
I do think we will see them confirmed. We've got a lot of senators who are pushing forward and making sure that the American people's mandate is fulfilled. The American people overwhelmingly voted for Donald Trump because we didn't like the way the country was headed. We want a fresh start. We want someone to put America first, and that's what Donald Trump is going to do. I am sure that one of the primary discussions at that cabinet meeting is going to be, how do we cut costs? How do we reduce the size and scope of the federal government? And how do we ensure that every tax dollar we spend is spent putting Americans first?
Keith Gross, attorney and conservative activist, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Coming up, the Department of Health and Human Services defines male and female under President Trump's new executive order. We'll have more on those new guidelines after the break.
I'm Ilka. I live with my daughter and with my grandchildren. There's a sense of comfort that comes with eating a good meal. We try to make the most, of what we have. We have rent to pay, and then there are lights and there are gas. And while my daughter and I both work, it still just doesn't seem like there's enough to go around sometimes.
Every day, millions of our neighbors face hunger, including 1 in 5 children, and food costs keep rising. Please call or go online right now to join Feeding America with your gift of just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day. Your monthly support can fill plates with nutritious food for families across the country and in your community, thanks to a nationwide network of food banks and volunteers.
If you were over and playing with us, you were part of our family and you were going to eat. A real cook can take nothing and make something.
No one should ever have to wonder if they will have enough to eat, and our neighbors are working hard to feed their families every day. Call or go online now. Visit helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month. 98% of donations go directly to help millions of people facing hunger from coast to coast and in your own community. Use your credit card and you'll get this exclusive canvas grocery bag as a thank you for joining hands with people across America to help end hunger.
Some of the lessons that I hope that my family will take, it is important to treat people the way that you want to be treated. I have carried on the tradition of loving people through food.
Please call right now or go online to make a monthly gift at helpfeedingamerica.org. Your support helps our neighbors bring food home to their families.
Say goodbye to harsh, bitter coffee and hello to a delicious, smooth brew. With specialty quality beans, expertly roasted in-house, you'll taste the difference with every sip. Fermented with a blend of 50 enzymes, Dave's Coffee delivers a rich brew like no other. Made with the highest grade specialty beans available, you're sure to taste the difference. Elevate your morning with Dave's Enzyme Fermented Coffee.
When it comes to disasters and emergencies, it's not a matter of if, but when.
I'm relying on luck, but who knows if it'll be on my side.
Let's prepare so we all have a better story to tell. Take control at ready.gov/olderadults.
Welcome back to Newsroom. Senate Republicans are moving forward today with a $340 billion bill. The legislation focuses on President Trump's priorities, such as immigration, energy, and defense. This decision comes despite Trump's preference for the House's comprehensive package, which includes $4.5 trillion in tax cuts. The Senate bill proposes an annual increase of $85 billion over 4 years. Funds will enhance border security, deregulate energy sectors, and boost military spending. Republicans say these expenses will be offset by cuts elsewhere. Democrats lack the votes to block the bill, but vow to oppose it vigorously. The Senate plans an all-night session to advance the legislation. The Department of Health and Human Services has updated its definitions of female and male. This follows President Trump's January executive order named Defending Women from Gender Ideology Extremism. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. released the new guidance. It defines sex as an immutable biological classification of male or female. Female refers to individuals with reproductive systems producing eggs, and male to those producing sperm. The guidance emphasizes that these definitions will inform HHS policies. Kennedy stated that the Trump administration is bringing back common sense to the federal government. Democratic lawmakers joined researchers and union workers outside HHS headquarters yesterday. They're demanding the Trump administration end its funding freeze at government agencies and, quote, respect union workers' contracts. NTD correspondent Jason Blair has the story from Washington, D.C.
Hey, hey, RFK, hands off the FDA!
Representatives Jamie Raskin and Glenn Ivey and Senator Chris Van Hollen joined workers and researchers outside of the Health and Human Services headquarters on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. They spoke against actions taken by the Trump administration and specifically targeted Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Elon Musk. The lawmakers say that Musk is pushing to, quote, gut federal services and impose mass layoffs.
The research that you're doing is making a difference. We're all counting on you to continue to have a chance to work. And that's why we're here to fight the administration to make sure we can continue allowing you all to do the basic research that we need to save lives.
They say their demands are no cuts to vital services, no mass layoffs, and end the funding freeze. Since President Trump took office, his administration has taken actions ranging from freezing certain federal funds to canceling contracts. One of the most notable efforts has been DOGE, which has been auditing federal agencies with the mission to cut waste and fraud.
And there's no sugarcoating this. These cuts will kill more Americans.
Reporting on Capitol Hill, Jason Blair, NTD News.
A federal judge yesterday considered whether to dismiss a federal indictment against New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Judge Dale Ho held a hearing on what he called a very unusual situation. NTD's Arlene Richards has the details.
New York District Court Judge Daniel Ho carefully considered Wednesday whether or not to dismiss a federal criminal case against Mayor Eric Adams. Just before Ho approached the bench, Adams had solemnly walked into the courtroom, flanked by his attorneys. Trump-appointed acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove appeared for the Justice Department. At the outset of the hearing, Judge Ho said he understood that he has very little discretion to decide whether the indictment should be dismissed or not, and that under federal rules, the government is the first and best judge of whether a case should be dismissed. Nevertheless, he said he needed assistance on sorting out what is a very unusual situation. The Justice Department requested the dismissal based on their understanding that prosecutors were abusing the criminal justice process by charging Adams. Bove said the case has an appearance of impropriety and that continuing it interfered with federal national security and immigration concerns, explaining that Adams' security clearance needed to be restored and that he needed access to sensitive information related to federal immigration policies. Bove also said the case was interfering with Adams' ability to run for mayor. Judge Ho questioned the attorneys on both sides, as well as Adams, about the scope of the dismissal and whether granting it would be contrary to the public interest. He also asked if he should consider third-party filings that accuse the attorneys of engaging in a quid pro quo agreement or providing X in exchange for Y, to which they both denied. Bove and Adams' attorney Alex Spiro argued that the request was very routine, noting that it was not opposed, and that these types of requests are often not challenged, as in this case. Bove acknowledged that charges could be brought against Adams at some future date as the investigation would be ongoing, but said that he did not make the request in bad faith. Both attorneys expressed exasperation as the judge continued questioning about the circumstances surrounding the case. Adams stated under oath that he understood the terms of the dismissal and he did not have any objections, adding that he didn't commit a crime. Judge Ho said he understood that his role is quite narrow, but that he would take time to properly exercise his discretion. The hearing ended without a decision from the judge. He didn't say when he would issue a ruling. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
This winter is really one for the history books. A record-setting Arctic blast is spanning much of the continental U.S. today, and a new storm is starting as another one is ending. Take a look.
If you must be outside, cover any exposed skin with gloves, hats, scarves. Forecasters say cold from an Arctic blast is peaking in the U.S. today. They say it could set more than 100 daily temperature records, with some places hitting as much as 50 degrees below normal. The cold snap spans from North Dakota to South Texas, and it's spreading east today.
Single-digit temperatures are dangerous. They can be deadly. Frostbite and hypothermia can occur quickly.
Meanwhile, snowy weather continues in much of the country. A new winter storm is hitting the Northwest, causing a blizzard warning in northern Montana. And the Arctic blast is strengthening the earlier storm system that brought snow to Mississippi yesterday.
Some of the bridges are a little iffy.
It was still snow mainly, not ice. Now, it has dropped a lot, and it's a little worse than it was.
Today, that storm is pushing through mid-Atlantic states. Its departure is likely a relief for areas that saw catastrophic flooding over the weekend. In North Carolina, the snow is challenging ongoing hurricane recovery.
We will continue responding to the Helene Recovery 2. Work will be ongoing even through this week as the storm hits.
A bomb threat directed at Shenyun Performing Arts leads to an evacuation at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. This is according to a spokesperson for the Kennedy Center. The spokesperson confirmed that police received a call about a bomb threat around 10:44 a.m. Police say officers are on the scene but declined to offer more details. Televisions around the Kennedy Center displayed the words emergency alert and evacuate. Police have closed roads in the area. Shenyun Performing Arts says the dance troupe has received a dozen such threats in theaters all around the world. The threats, often in Chinese, are usually linked to the Chinese Communist Party and its consulate and embassies. This, according to the statement. Shenyun says tonight's performance is scheduled to go on as planned at 7:30 p.m. Moving on now, some breaking news for you. Kash Patel has been confirmed to lead the FBI as director. The vote was 51-49. GOP Senators Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski voted against him. When we come back, nearly 1 in 3 adults have more emergency savings now than they did last year. But many still struggle to pay for emergency expenses with savings alone. We'll be bringing on a financial analyst to discuss. And autocratic nations are aligning. China is a cornerstone to strengthening what some experts are calling an axis of upheaval. What's their goal and how should the U.S. respond? We'll be right back.
大提琴不仅仅是一件乐器，它是有生命、有感情的，需要我们精心的照顾。往往我们一个小小的动作，可能都会对人情绪产生微妙的影响。天音的品牌是福星，我们对于传统的理念很荣幸被神韵艺术团选为指定供应商。时间是酿造音色的不可替代的陪伴。我跟大提琴已经有60多年的友情了，每一把琴都有它自己的个性，熟悉它，才能真正发挥它的潜力。所以，我希望给你的每一把琴，都是首先我所信任的。
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
Right now at Mathis Home, buy one Lazy Boy recliner, get the second one free. That's right, buy one recliner, get the matching recliner absolutely free. Recliner pairs start at just $7.99. It's your chance to save on the handcrafted quality and comfort that Lazy Boy is famous for. And get 2 great chairs for one low price. They're all in stock now with easy financing and fast free delivery. Buy one, get one free on Lazy Boy recliners, only at Mathis Home.
Thanks for staying with us. Now, nearly 30%, or 1 in 3 of U.S. adults, have more emergency savings now than they did a year ago. But there's still a significant proportion of them who continue to face difficulties meeting emergency expenses from their savings alone. This all according to a recent report from consumer services company Bankrate. Now, joining us to break this all down is the chief financial analyst for Bankrate, Greg McBride. Greg, thank you for joining us again. Break this down for us. What are the key findings? What are the most important findings of this report?
Well, the latest update that we have is that about a third of Americans have more credit card debt than they do emergency savings. Only about 53% of Americans are in the desirable position of having emergency savings that exceeds credit card debt. That really hasn't improved. That 33% that has more credit card debt, that's notably higher than anything we had seen from 2011 to 2022. It's down a little bit from the past couple of years. It was 36%, but still it was in the 20s for years running. So as inflation went up, we saw that credit card balances went up and consumers having a difficult time paying that back.
So is inflation the only driving force behind the credit card debt? Are there other concerning causes for that debt?
It's a big contributor. A lot of household budgets were already tight. And then when inflation went up, 2 things happened. Those savings balances that had been built up during the pandemic, they got run down. The credit card balances that had been paid down during the pandemic, they got run back up as households leaned against that savings or that credit to really bridge the gap between where income ended and expenses kept going. When we polled Americans about, what's the biggest thing holding you back from saving more money, they overwhelmingly, more than 60%, pointed to inflation as the reason why. So the one bit of good news we've seen is that as inflation pressures have receded, we're seeing more and more Americans in the position where they're building or rebuilding that savings. You mentioned 30% that are in the position of having more savings now than they did this time a year ago. The first time we've noticed, though, the past few years that more people actually increased their savings rather than decreased it from the prior year. So that's a positive change.
And so speaking of these credit cards, according to the report, a majority or a significant amount at least of U.S. adults say that they have to use credit cards for emergencies. Are there any other alternatives out there for that?
Your best defense against unplanned expenses is having that emergency savings. Unfortunately, only about 40% of Americans could cover an unplanned $1,000 expense out of their savings. So set up a direct deposit from your paycheck into a dedicated savings account, or have an automatic transfer from your checking account to your savings account. That way you're paying yourself first, you're making that savings happen. And so what that does over time is it builds up that savings in the background and basically expands that buffer between you and high interest rate debt when those unplanned expenses inevitably arise. The more money you put into that savings, the bigger the buffer you have, the better you'll sleep at night.
Now, this report also introduces or reiterates the idea that the U.S. is a paycheck to paycheck nation. Now, in that case, if that's the case for so many adults and families out there, how do they set aside extra money for savings, as you mentioned there?
Yeah, and that's why if you wait until the end of the month and try to save what's left over, too often there's nothing left over, just because expenses are high. And if you're living paycheck to paycheck, And even on those occasions where there is some money left over, it's not consistent from one month to the next. So that's why it's really important to flip that around and do the saving first, automate it with something like that direct deposit or that automatic bank transfer. That way the savings happens automatically, even before you get out of bed on payday morning. Then you can really channel your efforts toward paying down the high cost credit card debt, those type of things. With the strong labor market, doing a side hustle, maybe even taking a second job for a period of time, that can go a long way toward getting that credit card debt paid off once and for all, or building up that savings cushion that gives you an adequate buffer so you're not tapping the credit cards the next time an unplanned expense pops up.
And so throughout this report, we've been seeing a lot in that report talking about how well Americans are equipped to pay for a $1,000 emergency expense. Is that the amount of money most Americans should be aiming for to have in their account? What's the ideal amount that Americans should aim for in their savings accounts?
The $1,000 is just kind of like a starting point. It's a kind of a measuring stick of sort of where people are. The ideal destination is enough to cover 6 months worth of expenses. But that takes years to get there. That's not going to happen overnight. And what constitutes 6 months of expenses, that's itself is a moving target. And that's why it's so important to have that automated regular deposit into that savings. What we've noticed is that it does take years of disciplined saving to really get to the point where you have that type of cushion. And who's most likely to have it? Those that have been at it for years. Baby boomers, even Gen Xers have a much higher propensity of having built up that savings than their younger counterparts.
Now, looking ahead for 2025 and sort of taking into account everything that's happening right now, whether it be overseas conflicts or tariffs, potential trade war maybe, what trends do you foresee in terms of household debt levels for 2025?
With inflation, the progress has really stalled out. So inflation running around 3% right now. And so I don't foresee that we're going to see a whole lot more progress on that's going to suddenly produce a windfall of savings. So interest rates are not going to come down very quickly. And so if you have that high cost credit card debt, you have to stay on offense, paying it down aggressively, taking advantage of 0% and other low rate balance transfer offers, because rates are going to stay high and they're going to be higher than what we had seen really at any point for about a 15-year period after the financial crisis. So rates are going to be higher than we're used to seeing. That's great if you've got savings. That's not great if you've got credit card debt. So it really puts the urgency on paying down and paying off that credit card debt so that you can be on the right side of that equation, having money that's in savings and benefiting from higher rates rather than being hurt by it by carrying debt.
Absolutely, and especially important since those egg prices do not seem to be going down just yet. Great advice, Greg McBride. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Moving on now, the U.S. Special Envoy to Ukraine and Russia is in Kyiv today, meeting Ukraine's president. That's as Vice President JD Vance talks about President Trump's strategy to end the war. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has more.
Special Envoy to Ukraine and Russia, Keith Kellogg, is in Kyiv on Thursday. He met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. There was no immediate comment from either side on the outcome of the talks. Zelenskyy's office says the planned joint news conference was cancelled at the request of the U.S. This comes after President Trump had a phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. And high-ranking U.S. officials met with Russian officials for talks earlier this week. On Thursday, Vice President JD Vance commented on Trump's strategy to end the fighting.
When he walks into negotiation, he says everything is on the table. And of course, that makes the heads explode in the American media because they say, why are you talking to Russia? Well, how are you going to end the war unless you're talking to Russia? You've got to talk to everybody involved in the fighting.
Trump and Zelenskyy exchanged accusations throughout the week. Zelenskyy accused Trump of repeating Russian disinformation, while Trump said Zelenskyy has not been democratically elected. On Wednesday night, Trump added that Zelenskyy did not meet the Treasury Secretary when he traveled to Kyiv. RSPN posted the clip where Trump talks about the Secretary's trip to agree on financial guarantees for America's aid to Ukraine.
He traveled many hours on the train, which is a dangerous trip. Now we're talking about the Secretary of the Treasury. He went there to get a document signed. And when he got there, he came back empty.
Zelenskyy previously said Ukraine didn't sign the document because it would have given the US access to Ukraine's rare earth minerals while offering too little in return. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Britain reaffirms its support for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy following President Trump's accusation that he is a dictator for postponing elections. Meanwhile, Russia rejects plans for European troops to serve as peacekeepers in Ukraine after the war ends. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has the story.
Britain's Defense Secretary John Healey compared Ukrainian Prime Minister Volodymyr Zelenskyy to British wartime leader Winston Churchill. It comes after President Trump accused the Ukrainian leader of being a dictator and criticized Zelenskyy for postponing elections. Speaking at a press conference in Norway,
he's the elected leader of Ukraine, and he's done what Winston Churchill did in Britain in the Second World War, suspended elections while at war.
The UK and Norway have started negotiations on a new defense pact aimed at combating the threat from Russia in the Arctic. The pact would see cooperation between the two nations' defense industries and closer working between their armed forces, including on protecting undersea cables from sabotage. Healey said this alliance also helps support Ukraine.
Norway and Britain, we jointly lead the maritime coalition of a dozen nations that is supporting Ukraine, especially with maritime power, and helping them build up their own power for the future.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer on Wednesday gave Zelenskyy his backing in a phone call. Starmer is due to make a trip to Washington, D.C. next week for talks with Trump, including on Ukraine and European security. Starmer last Sunday said he is ready and willing to put boots on the ground in Ukraine. He is considering sending British troops as peacekeepers after the war ends. Russia has said this would be unacceptable.
I would like to remind you of the words of our Minister of Foreign Affairs, that of course the deployment of military contingents of countries that are members of NATO on the territory of Ukraine cannot be acceptable to us.
Russia has repeatedly said it opposes having NATO troops on the ground in Ukraine, saying they would view this as a direct threat to Russia's sovereignty. The Telegraph newspaper reported Starmer is planning to present the peacekeeper plan to Trump next week. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vows to avenge the death of young Israeli hostages. Hamas terrorists handed over the bodies of infant Kfir Bibas and his 4-year-old brother Ariel today. The two were the youngest captives taken by Hamas in their October 7th attack. They're also among the most potent symbols of the trauma inflicted that day. The terrorists also handed over the bodies of their mother, Shiri, and that of a 4th hostage, journalist Oded Lifshitz. The handover is part of the ceasefire agreed to last month. The bodies of the 4 victims were carried on a stage in Khan Yunis today. Red Cross staff walked to the stage where the 4 coffins were laid out, surrounded by masked Hamas terrorists. The staff signed papers as part of the handover before the bodies were carried to their vehicles. Netanyahu suggests Israel will avenge the death of the hostages.
Our loved one's blood is shouting at us from the soil and is obliging us to settle the score with the despicable murderers, and we will. The Lord is a God who avenges.
A convoy carrying the 4 bodies arrived at a forensic institute in Tel Aviv today. A crowd of Israelis stood silently as the institute's entrance as the white vans drove in. More Israelis gathered in other parts of Tel Aviv as the bodies were returned. Kfir Bibas was 9 months old when the Bibas family was abducted at kibbutz near Oz. Their father was among the hostages too, but he was released earlier this month in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. Hamas claims the boys and their mother had been killed in an Israeli airstrike. Their deaths were never confirmed by Israeli authorities. Autocratic nations of China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea are deepening their ties. China at the cornerstone. Experts today on Capitol Hill joined lawmakers to discuss what's at stake for world order and how the U.S. should respond. NTD's Melina Wisecup reports.
China strengthening relations with Russia, Iran, and North Korea at a rapid pace, an alignment that experts are calling the axis of upheaval. Panelists shed light on how crucial China's support is to lengthening Russia's war on Ukraine. And in exchange for China's support, Russia is helping China to develop its defense capabilities.
that Russia provided China with sophisticated technology that will make submarines, Chinese submarines, quieter and more difficult to track. Such an agreement was nearly impossible to imagine just 2 to 3 years ago, given the highly sensitive nature of that technology.
So what is the ultimate goal of the autocratic nation's deepening ties? Experts say the end game is to undermine U.S. strength and influence on the world stage, putting individual rights and freedoms on the line.
Cross-border efforts to normalize censorship and surveillance, keep people divided and afraid, and cloak their moves to consolidate power in a web of opacity.
The panelists, however, disagreed on how best to approach the aligning nations. One said that the ties aren't that deep to begin with, therefore a simple end to the Russia-Ukraine war would suffice, while another said those ties are already too deep for one simple solution.
If we strike a very bad deal over Ukraine, you could see a calming down. It could take some of the urgency out of the relationship. You know, ending the war is not enough.
So my view is that China doesn't in the end want to just be the head of this coalition with Russia, Iran, and North Korea. It wants a much greater role in the world. It wants to be America's equal on the world stage.
And all this comes as President Trump's taking a 180 turn from the previous administration on how to approach the Russia-Ukraine war.
I'd like to hear from each of the panelists. How do you think that Beijing is viewing what looks like a new partnership between the U.S. and Russia that even goes beyond the war in Ukraine?
The assumptions about what engagement with today's Russia will bring us is really predicated on our likely ability, A, to prize Russia away from this deeper relationship with today's PRC.
All panelists agree that the U.S. is not taking the threat seriously enough and should re-strategize how to move forward to protect the world order and liberty. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Coming up, surviving a plane crash can be complicated. Following a series of major plane crashes recently, experts explain how survivors can process the trauma. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Just like all of you, I had problems sleeping. I had tried every pillow out there and nothing worked. I'd flip-flop all night, use my arm for support, and fall asleep, or I'd wake up with a sore neck or maybe a headache. Well, quality sleep comes from keeping your neck straight at night. You have to fill in that space between your head and your bed. That's why I invented My Pillow. My Pillow's patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs, and it doesn't matter if you sleep on your back, stomach, side, or any combination of all three.
When I got My Pillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get Classic King My Pillows for only $19.98. Queen size just $18.98. Standard Classic My Pillows only $14.98. That's right, only $14.98. Plus all orders $75 or more ship absolutely free.
I am so glad you ladies are here. You each have your own rooms.
Thank you.
Get settled in. I'll call you for dinner. Adopting teen sisters, it's a lot. Girls, you're gonna be late. You want breakfast?
No thanks, we're good.
They're always in their own world.
What'd you get there?
Twice the work. Twice the surprises.
Just try it.
But if you think of it that way, they're also twice as fulfilling.
I think you should ask her yourself.
Is it okay to call you Mom?
Of course you can.
I debate all day. It's what I do. But there are some things that are undebatable, like your mental health, my own mental health. I was in a dark place when my brother passed away in a car accident. I've never been more devastated than the day I lost my mom. I was depressed, miserable, in ways I never imagined. I reached out, and my sisters came. My pastor, my therapist. They helped me get through it. found that the more I spoke up, the healthier my mind became. The chaos that was in me began to subside. I was more focused, clear. When you love your mind, you can go so much further. That's not up for debate. Find mental health resources at loveyourmindtoday.org.
Breaking news for you, the Senate just confirmed Kash Patel as director of the FBI. The final vote count was 51-49. The two Republicans who voted no were Senators Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. Patel cleared the Senate Judiciary Committee last week by a vote of 12-10. This was along party lines. That was after Democrats on the committee delayed his vote for a week. A half dozen Democrats on the committee gathered outside FBI headquarters today before the vote. They spoke out against Patel and made a last-ditch plea to derail his confirmation. Moving on, Monday's Delta Airlines crash at Toronto's Pearson Airport marks the fourth major aviation incident in North America in just the past 3 weeks. Now, psychologists and airline safety experts are trying to help passengers learn how to process the trauma of a plane crash. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details.
A safety presentation every airline passenger has seen a million times. But is anyone listening? Robert Bohr of the Center for Aviation Psychology says not so much.
It's perfectly natural that we zone out when the safety demonstration is being given to us at the start of a flight.
Bohr says knowing what to do in the event of an emergency can potentially save your life and make an emotionally distressing experience easier to process.
Maybe for the 100th, 500th time, however often we fly, count the number of rows to the exit, take nothing with you, extremely important, amongst many other things. We have a much greater chance of survival, and psychologically, we're likely to do better.
Stephanie Brown, the director of aviation safety at Purdue University, agrees.
When you enter the aircraft is the most vital part of any emergency response. That means that we're listening, and when it's your time to exit the aircraft, you do. You're not grabbing your personal belongings or anything of that nature, because that slows down the process.
Bohr says research shows that what most people require after surviving a traumatic event is practical support.
How do I get my luggage? Where's my passport? How do I get home? I can't get in because the keys are still in the aircraft. Safety, food, all of these sorts of things, accommodation for the night, are far more important than delving deep into the psyche at that moment in time.
Bohr adds that it's best not to attempt to understand the trauma in the immediate moments following an aviation accident. There will be plenty of time to process later once you're comfortable and ready to talk. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
A historic American ocean liner is getting a new life underwater. The SS United States, built in the 1950s, was once the largest U.S.-made passenger ship. Yesterday, it was towed down the Delaware River, heading to Alabama. There, it will be sunk to create an artificial reef. The ship, 5 city blocks long, carried nearly 1 million passengers before retiring in 1969. Now, it will become a habitat for marine life and a new attraction for divers off the Alabama coast. When we come back, President Trump will be hosting a reception in the White House to honor the Black History Month in the next hour. Stay with us.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritang omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritang green vegetable omega-3, greener, healthier, and more effective. Visit puritang.com to learn more.
There's cultures that have been lost. But
this culture hasn't been. The artist is showing us our sense of who we are, where we came from. You look at his hat. His hat is knitted probably by a man, because a man traditionally knitted the hats. That hat tells you the story of who this person is, what his place in the culture is, the animals around him. Everything's all contained in the messages in the hat. And the tool that he's carrying over his shoulder. This is a centuries-old tool that has been able to rework the mountains. Those traditions are invaluable, and if we don't honor those traditions, then we're rootless. The artist is showing us the value of maintaining our culture and respecting our culture.
Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Fiona G. This afternoon, President Donald Trump is hosting a reception honoring Black History Month at the White House. And moments ago, the Senate just confirmed Kash Patel, Trump's nominee to lead the FBI. A bomb threat directed at Shenyun Performing Arts leads to an evacuation at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. Shenyun says this is one of dozens of such threats made internationally. What is Trump's strategy on Russia? NTD's Paul Graney sat down with China expert Gordon Chang at CPAC. The State Department updates its fact sheet on China with President Trump's priorities, what they changed, and what they're now focusing on. Longtime Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky announces today he will not run for re-election in 2026. Millions remain under winter weather alerts as record-breaking cold grips the nation. The deadly storm wreaked havoc across multiple states, claiming several lives, causing hundreds of crashes, and bringing travel to a standstill.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
We're starting this hour off with a story coming out of Washington, D.C. A bomb threat directed at Shenyun Performing Arts has led to an evacuation at the Kennedy Center. That's according to a spokesperson for the performance venue. The spokesperson confirmed police received a call about a bomb threat around 10:44 a.m. Police say officers are on the scene but declined to offer more details. Televisions around the Kennedy Center displayed the words emergency alert and evacuate. Police have closed roads in the area. Shenyun Performing Arts says the dance troupe has received a dozen such threats in theaters all around the world. The threats, often in Chinese, are usually linked to the Chinese Communist Party and its consulate and embassies, this according to the statement. Shenyun says tonight's performance is scheduled to go on as planned at 7:30 p.m. The Senate just confirmed Kash Patel as director of the FBI. The final vote count was 51 to 49. The two Republicans who voted no were Senators Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. Patel cleared the Senate Judiciary Committee last week by a vote of 12 to 10 along party lines. That was after Democrats on the committee delayed his vote for a week. A half dozen Democrats on the committee gathered outside FBI headquarters today before the vote. They spoke out against Patel and made a last-ditch plea to derail his confirmation. Meanwhile, President Trump's nominee for Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, just cleared a major hurdle to Senate confirmation. The Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions advanced her nomination. The vote was 12 to 11, strictly along party lines. McMahon's nomination will head to the full Senate for consideration now. She is only one of 4 cabinet picks yet to be confirmed. Republican senators support her willingness to dismantle the Department of Education, while Democrats oppose her for that position. Republican Senator Mitch McConnell announced today that he will not be seeking re-election next year. McConnell, the longest-serving Senate party leader in U.S. history, chose his 83rd birthday to share his decision not to run for another term in Kentucky and to retire when his current term ends. He made the announcement when he was addressing colleagues in a speech on the Senate floor.
7 times, my fellow Kentuckians have sent me to the Senate. Every day in between, I've been humbled by the trust they placed in me to do their business right here. Representing our Commonwealth has been the honor of a lifetime. I will not seek this honor an 8th time. My current term in the Senate will be my last.
McConnell, who was first elected back in 1984, intends to serve the remainder of his term ending in January 2027. The Kentuckian has dealt with a series of medical episodes in recent years, including injuries sustained from falls and times when his face briefly froze while he was speaking. His dramatic announcement comes almost a year after his decision to quit his leadership post after the 2024 election. South Dakota Senator John Thune, a top McConnell deputy, replaced him as majority leader. The White House recapped President Trump's first month in office earlier today. Let's hear from Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt.
The president has already signed 73 executive orders. That is more than double the number signed by Joe Biden and more than quadruple the number signed by Barack Obama over the same period. These executive orders have ended burdensome regulations, sealed the border, unleashed our domestic energy sector, eliminated divisive DEI from our federal government, stopped the weaponization of government, cut waste, fraud, and abuse, reinstituted America First trade and foreign policies, and ultimately restored common sense. The president also signed the Lake and Riley Act into law, which ensures ICE will detain illegal aliens arrested or charged with theft or violence. As of today, the Senate has already confirmed 18 cabinet-level nominees, which is more than at this point under the Obama administration in 2009, and more than double the pace of the Biden administration in 2021. And today, we expect Kash Patel to be confirmed as the next director of the FBI. We are proud to announce that the president will host his first official cabinet meeting here at the White House next Wednesday, February 26th. In just 4 weeks, President Trump has already hosted the leaders of Israel, Japan, Jordan, and India. And next Monday, the president will host France's President Emmanuel Macron. And on Thursday, the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer will visit the White House as well.
National Security Advisor Michael Waltz also highlighted Trump's breakthroughs in foreign policy.
Over the last month, just to name a few, I had the honor of sitting in the Oval Office as President Trump spoke with President Putin and then immediately spoke with President Zelenskyy. And both of them said only President Trump could bring both sides to the table and only President Trump could stop the horrific fighting that has been going on now for the better part of 4 years, and that only President Trump could drive the world back to peace. Both of those leaders said that in back-to-back calls. And of course, we just had our historic talks mediated by our good friends and partners, Saudi Arabia. We give great thanks to Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman for hosting, and sat down for the first time in years with the Russians and talked about a path forward with peace. On top of that, and one of the things that led to that was the tremendous confidence building measure that we had with the release of Mark Fogel.
CPAC 2025 kicked off today with a keynote discussion with Vice President JD Vance at the National Harbor in Maryland. NTD's Washington correspondent Luis Martinez brings us more from the event.
first of all, very interesting. Before JD Vance took to the stage, Mercedes and Matt Schlapp, the heads of the CPAC organization, talked about 3 resolutions that CPAC International Summit that was hosted yesterday signed unanimously. One to counter the malign influence of the Chinese Communist Party worldwide, one to show support for Israel against the threats in the Middle East, and a third one fighting globalism. So, of course, these are the CPAC delegations from all over the world that are gathered here at the National Harbor. Right after that brief introduction, then Mercedes Schlapp sat down with Vice President JD Vance to give us an official start to CPAC 2025. One of the main topics of discussion was the economy, and interestingly enough, Vice President JD Vance not only talked about that it would take time for the Trump administration to bring prices down as promised during the campaign trail, but also mentioned how pivotal the reconciliation bill and that process in Congress will be to the administration's intentions of lowering prices. Let's listen to what Vice President JD Vance had to say about that.
And I actually talked to the president about this yesterday, and he said to me, look, it's very rare that you can get 2 reconciliation bills done in one Congress, which is why he thinks we've got to do a lot with that one big, beautiful bill, that first reconciliation package that we're going to get through the House and the Senate.
So as Vice President JD Vance commenting on how President Trump has already weighed in and chosen the House's version of the budget resolution to move forward with this reconciliation process. But another subject of discussion during this brief interaction between Vice President JD Vance and Mercedes Schlapp was JD Vance's speech at the Munich Security Conference. The Vice President actually redoubled on his message that European allies should have shared values with Americans and not censor free speech. Let's listen.
That friendship is based on shared values. You do not have shared values if you're jailing people for saying we should close down our border. You don't have shared values if you cancel elections because you don't like the result, and that happened in Romania. You do not have shared values if you're so afraid of your own people that you silence them and shut them up. So let's have shared values. Let's defend democracy. Let's have free expression, not just in the United States, but all over the Western world. That is the path to strong alliances in Europe.
So Vice President JD Vance also took the opportunity to take a victory lap, because let's remember today is February 20th. That is the first month since President Trump has been in office. So of course, JD Vance went over a list of the accomplishments that the administration has made since getting to the White House. He also made a quick quip to CNN saying that President Trump had signed as many executive orders as CNN had viewers. So a lot of humor, a lot of celebration and jubilation here at CPAC 2025. Well, later today, we're going to hear from Senator Rick Scott. He's hosting a panel on the threat of the Chinese Communist Party's influence internationally. We will also hear from Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, Senator Ted Cruz, Senator Jim Banks, and we're also expecting a special appearance by Elon Musk that was announced earlier today by Matt Schlapp. We still don't know what time that will be, but stay tuned for any and all updates on CPAC 2025.
Autocratic nations of China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea are deepening ties. China at the cornerstone of it all. Experts today on Capitol Hill joined lawmakers to discuss what's at stake for world order and how the U.S. should respond. NTD's Melina Weiskup reports.
China strengthening relations with Russia, Iran, and North Korea at a rapid pace, an alignment that experts are calling the axis of upheaval. Panelists shed light on how crucial China's support is to lengthening Russia's war on Ukraine. And in exchange for China's support, Russia is helping China to develop its defense capabilities.
That Russia provided China with sophisticated technology that will make Chinese submarines, quieter and more difficult to track. Such an agreement was nearly impossible to imagine just 2 to 3 years ago, given the highly sensitive nature of that technology.
So what is the ultimate goal of the autocratic nations deepening ties? Experts say the end game is to undermine U.S. strength and influence on the world stage, putting individual rights and freedoms on the line.
Cross-border efforts to normalize censorship and surveillance, keep people divided and afraid, and cloak their moves to consolidate power in a web of opacity.
The panelists, however, disagreed on how best to approach the aligning nations. One said that the ties aren't that deep to begin with, therefore a simple end to the Russia-Ukraine war would suffice, while another said those ties are already too deep for one simple solution.
If we strike a very bad deal over Ukraine, you could see a calming down. It could take some of the urgency out of the relationship. Ending the war is not enough.
So my view is that China doesn't in the end want to just be the head of this coalition with Russia, Iran, and North Korea. It wants a much greater role in the world. It wants to be America's equal on the world stage.
And all this comes as President Trump's taking a 180 turn from the previous administration on how to approach the Russia-Ukraine war.
I'd like to hear from each of the panelists. How do you think that Beijing is viewing what looks like a new partnership between the U.S. and Russia that even goes beyond the war in Ukraine?
The assumptions about what engagement with today's Russia will bring us is really predicated on our likely ability, A, to prize Russia away from this deeper relationship with today's PRC.
All panelists agree that the U.S. is not taking the threat seriously enough and should re-strategize how to move forward to protect the world order and liberty. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
The State Department has changed references to China on its website, focusing on the trade deficit. It also dropped talk of assistance to China on cultural and environmental issues. The State Department's fact sheet on China now says that China's economy is, quote, one of the most restrictive investment climates in the world. The webpage says the U.S. will place its own interests and the American people first and work to end China's abusive, unfair, and illegal economic practices. It goes on to read, quote, the United States is dedicated to countering the Chinese Communist Party's malicious cyber activity against U.S. government, private sector, and critical infrastructure networks to help protect American citizens, businesses, and industries. The new webpage also mentioned China's global trafficking of fentanyl precursors, manipulation of international organizations, and human rights abuses. The State Department said the updates reflect the Trump administration's policies and priorities. Senate Republicans are moving forward today with a $340 billion bill. The legislation focuses on President Trump's priorities, such as immigration, energy, and defense. This decision comes despite Trump's preference for the House's comprehensive package, which includes $4.5 trillion in tax cuts. The Senate bill proposes an annual increase of $85 billion over 4 years. Funds will enhance border security, deregulate energy sectors, and boost military spending. Republicans say these expenses will be offset by cuts elsewhere. Democrats lack the votes to block the bill, but vow to oppose it vigorously. The Senate plans an all-night session to advance the legislation. A federal appeals court has rejected an emergency request from President Trump. The request sought to enforce his executive order ending birthright citizenship for children of illegal immigrants. The Ninth Circuit denied the bid to pause a lower court ruling that blocked the order. The court said the government failed to prove immediate harm. Trump's order argues that the 14th Amendment does not guarantee automatic citizenship to everyone born in the U.S. A 3-judge panel will hear full arguments in June. When we come back, embattled New York City Mayor Eric Adams will keep his job, at least for now. But Governor Kathy Hochul is pushing for increased oversight at City Hall. Millions remain under winter weather alerts as record-breaking cold grips the nation. The deadly storm wreaked havoc across multiple states, claiming several lives, causing hundreds of crashes, and bringing travel to a standstill. That and more after the break.
The bladder control aisle. You won't shop here again. Your private business is your own. The constant struggle is over. Now there's a better way. It's HDIS. We home deliver bladder control products. We understand how you feel. For over 25 years, we've home delivered to many of the 20 million Americans who deal with incontinence. We offer all brands. We pay shipping and use plain, unmarked boxes. If we can help you or someone you care for, call for your free product sample pack and $45 in money-saving coupons. Our counselors will help you choose the right product. And unlike stores, we're always in stock. You'll get what you need. Satisfaction guaranteed. HDIS, the better way.
For your free sample pack with your free catalog, $45 in money-saving coupons, and free product samples, call 1-800-701-6159. That's 1-800-701-6159.
Where did the time go? Somehow I lost all those years. Where did the time go? I don't know how I got here. Or how did I get here? I can see now.
You've done the hard part. You quit smoking. Now do the easy part and get scanned for lung cancer. If you smoked, you may still be at risk, but early detection could save your life. Talk to your doctor and learn more at savedbythescan.org.
Every day, thousands of kids start vaping. And I can't let this happen to my kid. Of course, it's awkward to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping. Hey, bestie, how sketch is vaping? It's hard to get their attention. Ready? Go. Yes, look at that. You didn't turn yours over. So if you want to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping, you have to get it trending. Right, Backpack Kid?
Let's do it.
First, invite your kid to do the vape talk. Let's try this. All right.
Why is he here?
Yeah, I gotta get it trending, honey.
Come on.
To the left. To the right. Let's go.
Oh, honey, can we talk?
Yeah, what's up?
I see a lot of your friends vaping.
Visit talkaboutvaping.org for tips on when and how to have the vape talk.
Embattled New York City Mayor Eric Adams will be keeping his job, at least for now. Today, New York Governor Kathy Hochul decided not to remove her fellow Democrat from office. This according to 3 people familiar with the governor's plan. Instead, Hochul is pushing for increased oversight of City Hall. The governor has faced questions about the mayor's future since his bribery indictment in September. Adams has pleaded not guilty. Hochul has been under pressure to oust him, but has voiced concern that doing so would be undemocratic. A New York governor has never removed a sitting mayor in the state's history. But after 4 of Adams' top deputies quit Monday, Hochul said she had serious questions about the long-term future of this mayoral administration. Millions remain under winter weather alerts as a deadly storm moves out of the mid-Atlantic. The powerful system brought heavy snow, extreme cold, and travel chaos across multiple states. NTD's Christina Corona has more.
Snow is finally easing across Virginia and North Carolina after a powerful winter storm claimed at least 4 lives. 2 in Nebraska, including a state trooper, 1 in North Carolina, and 1 in Tennessee. Hazardous conditions caused over 800 crashes in Virginia on Wednesday, injuring at least 45 people. Air travel was also disrupted, with over 150 flights canceled at Charlotte Douglas International Airport and delays in Raleigh and Dallas. The National Weather Service reported preliminary snowfall totals, including 55 inches in Teton Village, Wyoming, 16 inches in Sundell, Michigan, 13 inches in Virginia Beach, and 11 inches in Rochester, New York, and Moyock, North Carolina. Freezing temperatures stretched from Montana to Florida, impacting 230 million Americans. Nebraska City saw record-breaking lows, with Omaha at -12 degrees, Lincoln at -17 degrees, and Norfolk hitting -18 degrees. Edgemont, South Dakota hit -38 degrees, while Columbia, Missouri broke a 1929 record with -6 degrees. Forecasters warn of more record lows across the South, including Texas and Oklahoma, through Friday. Although the storm is moving offshore, freezing rain and black ice remain serious hazards. Authorities are urging residents to stay off the roads in affected areas. Christina Corona, NTD News.
Walmart forecasts sales and profit for the fiscal year ending January 2026 below Wall Street estimates. The world's largest retailer expects inflation-wary consumers to pull back after several quarters of solid growth. Here's more.
Shares of Walmart dropped as much as 7% Thursday morning after the world's largest retailer forecast sales and profit below Wall Street's expectations. Walmart's disappointing outlook for fiscal year 2026 follows several quarters of solid growth, which helped propel the retailer's share price roughly 72% in 2024, with a new record high hit just last week. But Thursday's guidance suggests Walmart now expects inflation-weary consumers to pull back on spending. It also hints at how the company expects to fare under President Trump's additional tariffs on goods made in China and the threat of 25% tariffs on products made in Mexico and Canada. Still, Walmart's chief financial officer said he continues to view U.S. shoppers as resilient and focused on value. While retail sales overall in January experienced their biggest monthly decline in 2 years, Walmart sales actually surpassed analysts' estimates, powered by higher-income shoppers. Shares of rivals Amazon and Target moved lower Thursday after Walmart's report.
Monday's Delta Airlines crash at Toronto's Pearson Airport marks the fourth major aviation incident in North America in just the past 3 weeks. Now, psychologists and airline safety experts are trying to help passengers learn how to process the trauma of a plane crash. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details.
A safety presentation every airline passenger has seen a million times. But is anyone listening? Robert Bohr of the Center for Aviation Psychology says not so much.
It's perfectly natural that we zone out when the safety demonstration is being given to us at the start of a flight.
Bohr says knowing what to do in the event of an emergency can potentially save your life and make an emotionally distressing experience easier to process.
Maybe for the 100th, 500th time, however often we fly, count the number of rows to the exit, take nothing with you, extremely important, amongst many other things. We have a much greater chance of survival, and psychologically, we're likely to do better.
Stephanie Brown, the director of aviation safety at Purdue University, agrees.
When you enter the aircraft is the most vital part of any emergency response. That means that we're listening, and when it's your time to exit the aircraft, you do. You're not grabbing your personal belongings or anything of that nature, because that slows down the process.
Bohr says research shows that what most people require after surviving a traumatic event is practical support.
How do I get my luggage? Where's my passport? How do I get home? I can't get in because the keys are still in the aircraft. Safety, food, all of these sorts of things, accommodation for the night, are far more important than delving deep into the psyche at that moment in time.
Bohr adds that it's best not to attempt to understand the trauma in the immediate moments following an aviation accident. There will be plenty of time to process later once you're comfortable and ready to talk. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Coming up next, Russia and China ties. How could President Trump's efforts play out between the countries? A China expert speaks with us about international relations and tariffs. Stay with us.
August was born 3 pounds, 9.8 ounces. When I first saw him, it was like a whole range of emotions, joy, sadness. There's gonna be obstacles. You're gonna feel like, why is it happening to me? And you're gonna realize you're not the only one. There's no perfect way. Your own way will be the perfect way. You're gonna protect it with all your might. Just seeing him happy, it's just joy, you know? I look through his eyes, I can envision like a whole future with him already. To throw the first football to him, give him ice cream for the first time. Oh man, he can smile now. I'm happy because he's advancing in life, you know, he's growing. Being a young dad, it's not giving up, it's shifting. My life is now devoted to his life.
Right now at Mathis Home, buy one Lazy Boy recliner, get the second one free. That's right, buy one recliner, get the matching recliner absolutely free. Recliner pairs start at just $7.99. It's your chance to save on the handcrafted quality and comfort that Lazy Boy is famous for. And get 2 great chairs for one low price. They're all in stock now with easy financing and fast free delivery. Buy one, get one free on Lazy Boy recliners, only at Mathis Home.
This past year has been one of the hardest in MyPillow's history. It's because of you that we're making it through. My employees and I want to thank you for your continued support by extending our wholesale prices on classic MyPillows. Get standard classic MyPillows only $14.98. I can't believe I'm even saying that. Only $14.98. But it gets even better. Upgrade to a queen size MyPillow for just $18.98. King size only $1 more. Get my body pillows $29.98 and multi-use MyPillows for only $9.98. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of these wholesale prices, including my standard size MyPillow, originally $49.98, now only $14.98. Queens $18.98, Kings only $1 more. Not only that, order $75 or more, ship absolutely free. From all of us here at MyPillow, thanks America!
Thank you for staying with us. House Speaker Mike Johnson is now speaking at CPAC. Let's tune in.
The deep state has hidden it from us. This is a revolutionary kind of moment. It really is. And I told Elon in his office Monday before last, I said, you think of this like a scientist and a data analyst, and I think of it like a constitutional law attorney and a historian. Elon, what we're going to do here is bring back the founders' original intent for the federal government, right? I mean, Rob, you know, you're a student of history as well. The founders wanted a lean, small federal government. They wanted most of the power pushed down to the states, as you know, and they wanted the federal government to be closely monitored by the duly elected representatives of the people in Congress. The problem is, Congress has not been able to do that job because they've been hiding the evidence, hiding the ball. Elon's on the inside, and that's why the Democrats are so nervous. He is right over the target right now. Yeah.
It's been remarkable to see the Department of Government Efficiency. That's what DOGE stands for. Department of Government Efficiency. And Democrats are almost in this un-American position right now of being against their primary mission, which is to save the American taxpayer money, which to me doesn't make any sense.
They like to spend the taxpayer's dollar. I don't think that's ever been...
They sure do.
They're for big government. That's what big government progressives do. They want the government to control every aspect of our lives. And the last 4 years, Biden-Harris administration, it was, you know, regulations on steroids. And so now we have an opportunity to fix everything. We have a very ambitious, very aggressive legislative agenda because we have been given this opportunity by the voters to fix it. President Trump got 77 million popular votes, right? Yeah. In the House, House Republicans got 74.8 million popular votes. That's the highest total we've ever gotten.
Wow.
Yeah, so we see it as a mandate to dial all that back and to fix it, and you're seeing that happen very aggressively. The president is over 300 executive actions already, and we're going to codify so much of what he's doing so that the next team can't unwind it. That's right.
In America, we hold presidential elections every 4 years. We did so during COVID. We did so during the Second World War. We did so during the Civil War. During the War of 1812, the White House was burned to the ground 3 months before James Madison was elected. How important is it for Ukraine to hold presidential elections?
Well, it's very important, of course, and
because they were canceled last spring.
That's right, and the president has pointed that out.
And they claim to be a democracy.
That's right. We need an end to the conflict, and what I've explained, I've done 2 panels at 2 different events this morning. I started the Republican Governors Association. They asked me about this, and I went to the the big business leaders, Fortune 500 executives there, they all want to know the same thing. What is President Trump doing there? I said, you got to give him room to operate and do what he does. He's doing a level set, right? You've got to get both parties to come and bring about an end to this conflict, which will serve America's interest and everybody's interest around the world. But I think of it very much like a mediation or arbitration. If you're a lawyer, you know, I'm a recovering lawyer, forgive me, I think of those terms. But when you start a mediation, you start an arbitration between two parties, you don't bring them into the room for that first meeting. You do it separately. So I think Zelenskyy complaining that he wasn't invited to the first meeting with Saudi Arabia and Russia is misplaced. I mean, what Trump's trying to do is do a level set, put the conditions in place for that real negotiation to happen, and we've got to allow him to do what he does. Remember, he wrote The Art of the Deal. He knows what he's doing.
Absolutely.
Okay?
If that level set takes, let's say, 3-6 months, or it drags on, do you see another funding bill for the war in Ukraine?
Look, there's no appetite for that. What do you think? No. Yeah.
We got our answer there?
We have to bring it to an end. And I can tell you that our European allies understand the necessity of this as well. It's drug on too long. By some estimates, Russia's lost almost 700,000 troops, maybe more. The Ukrainians have suffered great losses. We have to bring an end to the conflict. President Trump is exactly right. It's time for it to end, and he is the brute force, I think, that can make that happen.
The president said that a percentage of DOGE savings could maybe go back to the American people in the form of what he called DOGE stimulus checks, something like 20%. How would that work?
Well, look, I mean, politically, that would be great for us, you know, you send everybody a check, but really, we have to think of it, I think, in a...
That just got everybody's attention, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
I just saw everybody look up all of a sudden.
I know.
Yep.
But if you think about our core principles, right, fiscal responsibility is what we do as conservatives. That's our brand. And we have a $36 trillion federal debt. We have a giant deficit that we're contending with. I think we need to pay down the credit card, right? That's what I think we need to do.
Mr. Speaker, we keep hearing about this one big, beautiful bill. Tell me how big, how beautiful?
Oh, it's going to be so big. I shouldn't do it in that voice. So the beauty of reconciliation, and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on the procedure, but normally you need a 60-vote threshold in the Senate to do anything of substance, but budget reconciliation is the one exception to the process where you only need 51 votes in the Senate, a bare majority. So we're going to use this reconciliation process to achieve most of the priorities that we ran on in the election cycle and that President Trump, that's right, committed to. So I could be here a long time listing all those things, but clearly it's the most important interest of the country. We're going to secure that border once and for all. We're going to do that. We're going to get the economy going again, American economy going, make sure that we don't have the largest tax increase in U.S. history, which is what would happen by default at the end of this year if we fail in this mission, because the TCJA, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act extensions expire, the cuts expire. We're going to get the economy going. We're going to get back to American energy dominance in this bill. Yep. And we're going to take a blowtorch to the regulatory state, get the bureaucracy back in check. Lots of details, lots of subcategories under all that, but it's going to be a big, beautiful bill, and it has to be by necessity because that gives us the highest probability of success, remembering that I have a small margin in the House.
One.
I have one vote for much of this. What could go wrong, Rob?
Right,
it's going to be fine.
Right.
But everybody is committed to delivering the America First agenda, and that's why we're going to get it done. So,
what is your working dynamic like with Senate Majority Leader John Thune, who for the first time in a long time, the Senate's got a bigger majority than the House right now?
Yeah, they do. The Republican majority in the Senate has a larger margin than we do in the House. And so by necessity, the two chambers have to work very closely together, and that's kind of an innovation. It doesn't really happen in Washington. It hasn't so long as I've been there. But as soon as I became Speaker of the House in October 23, the first instinct I had was go meet with the Senate Republicans and let's align the two chambers. It just makes sense. It's common sense. So we're doing that. And you're going to see no daylight between the Republicans in the House and Senate. Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, there was some reporting this week that the Democrats are planning what they're calling a super ticket in 2028, Kamala Harris and AOC. Are you prepared for that?
Oh, let it be so. Let it be so. Wow. Is that real? Is that real?
That's an actual legitimate, well, I use that word legitimate very loosely nowadays with the media, but that report is out there, we'll say.
Wow.
I don't know
amazing.
who would run for president and who would be VP.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I so hope that happens.
Do the Democrats, do they have a leader right now?
No, they don't. They don't have a leader.
Is there any leader at any level, or is it still Joe Biden?
Well, he wasn't the leader for the last 4 years. They really are in a real bind. They don't have a leader. They don't have a vision. They don't have a platform they can run on. They have to do a whole cloth reinvention of the party. But they're very divided right now because they're in the blame game as they do the autopsy of what happened in the election cycle. So it's an interesting time. Look, our party's in great shape right now. We are very unified. We have a broadened coalition. That's exactly right. And we have the principles and the policies that truly are better for the American people. I think they've recognized that. You know what happened in the last 4 years, Rob, is that the woke progressive left tried so hard, they moved so aggressively, so quickly to swing that pendulum to the left, and it went all the way to the left and it clicked. And now it's coming back, right? We are a center-right country. We always have been, we always will be. And I think President Trump is seen as a force helping us to push that pendulum back in place. So we're going to seize that historic moment. And I believe we can bring about a much better outcome for the people and for the country.
2 questions. Elon Musk tweeted yesterday, quote, "The real reason so many Democrats are upset about entitlements is that they're using taxpayer money to attract and retain illegal immigrants, their future voters." Is that what you think the last 4 years at both our borders has been all about?
100%. They opened the borders wide. They did not care about the calamity and the heartache and the death, frankly, that it caused of American citizens because it was a power play. They wanted to turn these people into voters, and they want to change the outcome of the census in 5 years. This is very serious, and we're going to be dealing with the effects of this, the catastrophe for years to come. It's a terrible tragedy, and don't ever forget that that was their motive. It was for their own political gain that they put the American people in such jeopardy. Fentanyl alone is the leading cause of death for Americans between the ages of 18 and 45, and that's flowed open the border. Human trafficking, all of the atrocities. They lost hundreds of thousands of unaccompanied minors in the system somewhere to traffickers. All of it, they turned the other way. They could have sealed that border any moment. The president had the authority, and I asked him personally on multiple occasions. I pleaded with him. I begged Joe Biden, use your authority. And he'd look down at the floor and shuffle his shoes and say, I can't do that. Well, the American people let him know how they felt about that.
Can I ask you, now that the horse is out of the barn, Joe Biden is in Rehoboth Beach, retired, how did he seem during those moments where you were with him in person?
It was only a couple of occasions. I talked to him on the phone a few more times than that. They didn't allow me to meet with him one-on-one for probably obvious reasons now. Yeah. But there's a, now widely reported story of something that happened, I think it was in early February of last year when I was in the Oval Office and I asked him why he paused LNG exports. Like, Mr. President, why would you pause liquefied natural gas exports to our European allies? Because they're going to have to go to Vladimir Putin to get their needs met. And he tried to argue with me and tell me that he didn't do that. And it occurred to me in this dialogue that he genuinely did not know what he had signed. That they had put this executive order in front of him, and he didn't understand what it was. And that was a very alarming moment of realization for me. And I think the whole country knows now. But it was a dangerous time, a very perilous time for us, particularly in that last year of his administration. But thank God that President Trump is back in the White House, and we can restore that.
I think, Mr. Speaker, this room knows you, but I think the American people are still getting to know you. And I thought this was wonderful. Your son is on the boxing team at the Naval Academy.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. How is he doing?
Well, he's bigger than his father. He's doing great. He made it to semifinals in the brigade, championship last Friday, and lost in a 1-point split decision to a young man that was 3 years older than him and had been boxing about 6 years longer, I think. So he held his own. He's been boxing for about 7 months, okay? So
7 months and he's on the team?
Yeah. He did jiu-jitsu for a long time. He's a tough kid, but this is a different kind of...
Does he learn that from his father?
Oh, yes, of course. I mean, of course.
Yes.
Of course. No, he's a tough kid. He's a great kid. He takes after his mother.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson.
All right, and there was House Speaker Mike Johnson speaking on the very first day of CPAC. Now up next, animation filmmakers in Hollywood are aiming to get the recognition that they deserve. That and more after the break.
A painting that has true beauty. I imagine it's like a door. The artist holds the key to open the door and bring people to a purer world. A world where people are more compassionate.
In 4 days. There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children. She didn't know what to do.
Did you have a good day at school?
She gave them some broth. Without any bread.
There you go.
And kissed them all soundly.
Night night.
Good night. And put them to bed. Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org.
Where did the time go? Somehow I lost all those years. Where did the time go? I don't know how I got here. Or how did I get here?
You've done the hard part. You quit smoking. Now do the easy part and get scanned for lung cancer. If you smoked, you may still be at risk, but early detection could save your life. Talk to your doctor and learn more at savedbythescan.org.
The U.S. Special Envoy to Ukraine and Russia is in Kyiv today, meeting Ukraine's president. This is as Vice President JD Vance talks about President Trump's strategy to end the war. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has more.
The Special Envoy to Ukraine and Russia, Keith Kellogg, is in Kyiv on Thursday. He met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. There was no immediate comment from either side on the outcome of the talks. Zelenskyy's office says the planned joint news conference was cancelled at the request of the U.S. This comes after President Trump had a phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. And high-ranking U.S. officials met with Russian officials for talks earlier this week. On Thursday, Vice President JD Vance commented on Trump's strategy to end the fighting.
When he walks into negotiation, he says everything is on the table. And of course, that makes the heads explode in the American media because they say, why are you talking to Russia? Well, how are you going to end the war unless you're talking to Russia? You've got to talk to everybody involved in the fighting.
Trump and Zelenskyy exchanged accusations throughout the week. Zelenskyy accused Trump of repeating Russian disinformation, while Trump said Zelenskyy has not been democratically elected. On Wednesday night, Trump added that Zelenskyy did not meet the Treasury Secretary when he traveled to Kyiv. RSPN posted the clip where Trump talks about the secretary's trip to agree on financial guarantees for America's aid to Ukraine.
He traveled many hours on the train, which is a dangerous trip. Now, we're talking about the Secretary of the Treasury. He went there to get a document signed, and when he got there, he came back empty.
Zelenskyy previously said Ukraine didn't sign the document because it would have given the US access to Ukraine's rare earth minerals while offering too little in return. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
South Korea's defense ministry said today the country and the United States conducted a joint aerial exercise. At least one U.S. F-16 fighter was also seen flying over the skies of the Korean peninsula. The military said the training was the first joint aerial exercise of the year between both countries. It was conducted during the deployment of the United States B-1B bomber to the peninsula. South Korean officials said the exercise showcased the allies' ability to deter North Korea's nuclear and missile threats, while also aiming to enhance coordination between U.S. and South Korean forces. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vows to avenge the death of young Israeli hostages. Hamas terrorists handed over the bodies of infant Kfir Bibas and his 4-year-old brother Ariel today. The two were the youngest captives taken by Hamas in their October 7th attack. They're also among the most potent symbols of the trauma inflicted that day. The terrorists also handed over the bodies of their mother, Shiri Bibas, and that of a fourth hostage, journalist Oded Lifshitz. The handover is part of the ceasefire agreed to last month. The bodies of the 4 victims were carried on a stage in Khan Yunis today. Red Cross staff walked to the stage where the 4 coffins were laid out, surrounded by masked Hamas terrorists. The staff signed papers as part of the handover before the bodies were carried to their vehicles. Netanyahu suggests Israel will avenge the death of the hostages.
Our loved one's blood is shouting at us from the soil and is obliging us to settle the score with the despicable murderers, and we will. The Lord is a God who avenges.
A convoy carrying the 4 bodies arrived at a forensic institute in Tel Aviv today. A crowd of Israelis stood silently at the institute's entrance as the white vans drove in. More Israelis gathered in other parts of Tel Aviv as the bodies were returned. Kfir Bibas was 9 months old when the Bibas family was abducted at kibbutz near Oz. Their father was among the hostages too, but he was released earlier this month in an exchange for Palestinian prisoners. Hamas claims the boys and their mother had been killed in an Israeli airstrike. Their deaths were never confirmed by Israeli authorities. A historic American ocean liner is set to get a new life underwater. The SS United States, built in the 1950s, was once the largest U.S.-made passenger ship. Yesterday, it was towed down the Delaware River, heading to Alabama. There, it will be sunk to create an artificial reef. The ship, 5 city blocks long, carried nearly 1 million passengers before retiring in 1969. Now it will become a habitat for marine life and a new attraction for divers off the Alabama coast. Spring break is coming for millions of students, and AAA has compiled a list of the top destinations travelers are booking. The time-honored tradition of heading to the Sunshine State is continuing. Orlando, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, and Tampa all made the top 10. Some people looking for an urban experience more than escaping the cold are heading to Chicago and New York. And if you're going overseas, no real surprises there either. Top destinations include Rome, London, Paris, Barcelona, and Madrid. But for those who are flying, it's going to cost. The average price for a spring break domestic ticket is $820, and for international travel, more than $1,400. Inside Out 2 was the highest grossing film of 2024, but along with acclaimed animated films The Wild Robot and Flow, it was excluded from the Best Picture Oscar race. Now, animation filmmakers are aiming to get the recognition they deserve.
Anxiety. Inside Out 2 was the highest grossing film of 2024. And it is also the highest grossing animated film of all time. But along with The Wild Robot and Flow, it got snubbed for Best Picture nomination at the Oscars.
In general, animation is just in its little corner on its own.
Now, animators are aiming to shatter the glass ceiling and get the recognition they deserve.
I think what people often don't understand is that animated films, even ones made with computers, are handmade. And the same decision-making goes into those kind of films, in fact, even more so than like live action. So I would love to see it, but, you know, obviously I don't get to call that stuff.
Animated films like The Beauty and the Beast, Up, and Toy Story 3 were all nominated for Best Picture. But in recent years, the genre has been overlooked.
I mean, in part, animation does it to itself. You know, we keep making movies with fart jokes and you know, whatever, low humor, which I love too. I love low humor. But I think there is a certain caliber that people are looking for in a Best Picture. And so, you know, we got to step it up.
Many still think animated films are for kids.
I think we're very careful when we make these, that they speak to people at different levels all the time. We never specifically make a film for one particular group of people. We make them for everyone.
Despite obstacles, animation filmmakers are hopeful for the future. The Latvian animated film Flow, which follows a cat finding refuge on a boat along with other animals, has made history with Latvia's first ever Oscar nominations.
I think more and more that we're being considered in that area. It's a little bit of a glass ceiling for us. We'd love to break through that a little bit more often.
What's your name, Big?
Coming up, a potential $5,000 check to every American. But would the Doge dividend add to inflation? Find out more about that after the break in the next hour.
According to ancient Chinese medicine, purslane is considered a medicinal herb and is used to help lower cholesterol, improve vascular functions, and prevent diabetes. Perilla seeds can nourish the lungs and spleen. It is used to treat asthma and improve pulmonary functions. Puritan green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds from Hwangmae Mountain in South Korea. It contains over 90% of omega-3, 6, 7, and 9. The highest concentration possible without chemical additives. The soft gel is made of natural seaweed. It is 100% organic and vegan. Both adults and children can take it with peace of mind. Ancient recipes were passed down from heaven to bring prosperity and longevity. Puritan green vegetable omega-3.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, please listen closely. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. It's a rate lock for your life insurance that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. Many policies you see don't have one, but you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. This plan was designed for people on a fixed income with coverage options that start at $9.95 a month. That's less than 35 cents a day. Your rate is locked in for life. Coverage can never be canceled, and your acceptance is guaranteed. You cannot be turned down because of your health. See for yourself. Call for an information kit and gift. Both are free with no obligation.
Call 1-800-624-6556 for your free information and your free gift. That's 1-800-624-6556. 1-800-624-6556. Call now.
I debate all day. It's what I do. But there are some things that are undebatable, like your mental health, my own mental health. I was in a dark place when my brother passed away in a car accident. I've never been more devastated than the day I lost my mom. I was depressed, miserable, in ways I never imagined. I reached out, and my sisters came, my pastor, my therapist. They helped me get through it. I found that the more I spoke up, the healthier my mind became. The chaos that was in me began to subside. I was more focused, clear. When you love your mind, you can go so much further. That's not up for debate. Find mental health resources at loveyourmindtoday.org.
There are real consequences to controlled media. and NTD's founders know them firsthand. Our freedom of thought is the price. This is the lesson that guides us in everything we do.
So there's the tear gas there.
We know the value of a free society. And we take seriously the responsibility to preserve it. We are NTD.
Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. Our stories today: a bomb threat directed at Shenyang Performing Arts leads to an evacuation at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. Shenyang says this is one of a dozen of such threats made internationally. A new category coming to Netflix produced in Mexico. The streaming giant announces a $1 billion investment in the Latin American country. A potential $5,000 check to every American, but would the Doge dividend add to inflation? China and Canada react to tariffs and retaliatory tariffs, with each country having a slightly different approach. The U.S. shipbuilding industry might struggle with meeting the Navy's long-term goal for military readiness. This while adversarial China rapidly expands its Navy. An NTD data-driven report on the problem and some solutions. Delta says it's offering no-strings-attached payments to victims of a plane that flipped over in Toronto.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon. A bomb threat directed at Shenyang Performing Arts leads to an evacuation at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. That's according to a spokesperson for the Kennedy Center. Here's more. The spokesperson confirmed police received a call about a bomb threat around 10:44 a.m. Police say officers are on the scene but declined to offer more details. Televisions around the Kennedy Center displayed the words "emergency alert" and "evacuate." Police have closed roads in the area. Shenyang Performing Arts says the dance troupe has received a dozen such threats in theaters around the world. The threats, often in Chinese, are usually linked to the Chinese Communist Party and its consulate and embassies, according to the statement. Shenyang says tonight's performance is scheduled to go on as planned at 7:30 p.m. The Senate just confirmed Kash Patel as director of the FBI. The final vote count was 51-49. The two Republicans who voted no were Senators Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. Patel cleared the Senate Judiciary Committee last week by a vote of 12-10 along party lines. That was after Democrats on the committee delayed his vote for a week. A half-dozen Democrats on the committee gathered outside FBI headquarters today before the vote. They spoke out against Patel and made a last-ditch plea to derail his confirmation. President Trump's nominee for Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, just cleared a major hurdle to Senate confirmation. The Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions advanced her nomination. The vote was 12-11, strictly along party lines. McMahon's nomination headed to the full Senate for consideration. She is one of only 4 cabinet picks yet to be confirmed. Republican senators support her willingness to dismantle the Department of Education, while Democrats oppose her for that position. Republican Senator Mitch McConnell announced today that he won't seek re-election next year. McConnell, the longest-serving Senate party leader in U.S. history, chose his 83rd birthday to share this information, not to run for another term in Kentucky, and to retire when his current term ends. He made the announcement when he was addressing colleagues in a speech on the Senate floor.
7 times, my fellow Kentuckians have sent me to the Senate. Every day in between, I've been humbled by the trust they placed in me to do their business right here. representing our Commonwealth has been the honor of a lifetime. I will not seek this honor an 8th time. My current term in the Senate will be my last.
McConnell, first elected in 1984, intends to serve the remainder of his term ending in January 2027. The Kentuckian has dealt with a series of medical episodes in recent years, including injuries sustained from falls and times when his face briefly froze when he was speaking. His dramatic announcement comes almost a year after his decision to quit his leadership post after the 2024 election. South Dakota Senator John Thune, a top McConnell deputy, replaced him as majority leader. The State Department has changed references to China on its website, focusing on the trade deficit. It also dropped talk of assistance to China on cultural and environmental issues. The State Department's fact sheet on China now says that China's economy is, quote, one of the most restrictive investment climates in the world. The webpage says the U.S. will place its own interests and the American people first and work to end China's abusive, unfair, and illegal economic practices. It goes on to read, quote, the United States is dedicated to countering the Chinese Communist Party's malicious cyber activity against U.S. government, private sector, and critical infrastructure networks to help protect American citizens, businesses, and industries. The new webpage also mentioned China's global trafficking of fentanyl precursors, manipulation of international organizations, and human rights abuses. The State Department said the updates reflect the Trump administration's policies and priorities. Autocratic nations of China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea are deepening ties. China at the cornerstone. Experts today on Capitol Hill joined lawmakers to discuss what's at stake for the world order and how the U.S. should respond. NTD's Melina Weisskopf reports.
China strengthening relations with Russia, Iran, and North Korea at a rapid pace, an alignment that experts are calling the axis of upheaval. Panelists shed light on how crucial China's support is to lengthening Russia's war on Ukraine. And in exchange for China's support, Russia is helping China to develop its defense capabilities.
Russia provided China with sophisticated technology that will make Chinese submarines, quieter and more difficult to track. Such an agreement was nearly impossible to imagine just 2 to 3 years ago, given the highly sensitive nature of that technology.
So what is the ultimate goal of the autocratic nations deepening ties? Experts say the end game is to undermine U.S. strength and influence on the world stage, putting individual rights and freedoms on the line.
Cross-border efforts to normalize censorship and surveillance, keep people divided and afraid, and cloak their moves to consolidate power in a web of opacity.
The panelists, however, disagreed on how best to approach the aligning nations. One said that the ties aren't that deep to begin with, therefore a simple end to the Russia-Ukraine war would suffice, while another said those ties are already too deep for one simple solution.
If we strike a very bad deal over Ukraine, you could see a calming down. It could take some of the urgency out of the relationship. Ending the war is not enough.
So my view is that China doesn't in the end want to just be the head of this coalition with Russia, Iran, and North Korea. It wants a much greater role in the world. It wants to be America's equal on the world stage.
And all this comes as President Trump's taking a 180 turn from the previous administration on how to approach the Russia-Ukraine war.
I'd like to hear from each of the panelists. How do you think that Beijing is viewing what looks like a new partnership between the U.S. and Russia that even goes beyond the war in Ukraine?
The assumptions about what engagement with today's Russia will bring us is really predicated on our likely ability, A, to prize Russia away from this deeper relationship with today's PRC.
All panelists agree that the U.S. is not taking the threat seriously enough and should re-strategize how to move forward to protect the world order and liberty. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
President Donald Trump is hosting a reception honoring Black History Month at the White House. Golfer Tiger Woods is also with him. Take a look.
Great. Black History Month. How are you, darling? Today we pay tribute to the generations of Black legends, champions, warriors, and patriots who helped drive our country forward to greatness. And you really are great. You're great people. What a great, nice group of... I have some people in front of me every once in a while with all the problems that are caused all over the world. They're not nice. They're not nice. And but we're making them nice. I can tell you that, and we're making them nice rapidly. So we're pleased to be joined in this really beautiful afternoon at the White House by hundreds of incredible members of the African American community, many of whom are making history themselves, including one of the greatest athletes of all time, who you just said hello, the man who matched Sam Snead's #1 record for the most PGA Tour wins ever, and a man who has 15 majors, and he's got a long way to go, too. I was with him a week ago. We played. I think, Adam, he's got some left, doesn't he, huh? He's got a couple of majors left, maybe more than that. But Tiger Woods, he's an incredible guy, an incredible athlete, incredible player. Thank you for being with us, Tiger. Thank you very much. And he got the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which he proudly wore today. And it's we have Senator Tim Scott here. What do you think, Tim? You never got the Presidential Medal. Maybe someday. Maybe someday. You better believe it. And also, Adam, thank you very much. Adam is, as Tiger will tell you, one of the greatest players and one of the great modern players. And he had 32 wins worldwide and winning the Masters also. And he's something very special and a great representative of golfers and athletes. Thank you very much, Adam. Even though he doesn't quite come from our country, he sort of does, right? He's here a lot. He comes from another nice place like Australia, right? And they've been very good, very, very good to us. Jay, thank you very much. Appreciate it very much. We also have the head of Pfizer here, so I want to thank him. One of the great people, one of the great businessmen. Thank you, Albert. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I want to congratulate our newly sworn-in Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Scott Turner. Come in. I got to say hello. Come on up here, Scott. I had Tim Scott pushing him so hard, you have no idea. I had no choice. Is that right, Tim? No, Scott is, I've known him a long time, and Scott's a real champion. Say a couple of words, Scott, please.
Well, hello, everyone. Is everybody happy to be here together? Is everybody happy to be here together? Amen. Well, first of all, I want to thank President Trump for his confidence and appointing me to this position. I consider it a great honor and a great blessing. And I thank God for this, and I'm real humbled by it. And you can guarantee that every day that I'm going to lay it down for the people of America. As Senator Tim Scott, thank you for your leadership. I really appreciate you. And for all of those who have gone before us, and those of you who have such a great voice today, keep on speaking, keep on preaching for not just Black America, but for all America. So we appreciate you. And my sister, Brooke Rollins, and all of those here, Mr. President, we look forward to working with you, sir, and carrying out this great agenda. We pray for you every day. God bless you, and thank you. God bless America. Thank you for President Trump.
Thank you. Congratulations. And I see we have a newly, I think you just got in, right? They just confirmed you, and you did it very nicely. Brooke Rollins, she's the Secretary of Agriculture. It's a big deal. That's great, Brooke. That was a good vote you had, too, huh? She went through very easily, a little easier than some of our people, but they were all approved, every one of them. And today we just had Kash Patel approved, which is great. So, Brooke, congratulations. Secretary of Agriculture, that's big stuff, right? That's big. So you're going to do fantastically. And congratulations also to a really good friend of mine. He endorsed me early, and he was one of the best surrogates you could have. The surrogate is when you walk around and go on television shows and they go try and beat you up, but he beat them up. They didn't have a chance against Tim Scott, Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina. And he's now the longest serving Black United States Senator in the history of our country. I don't know. That's pretty good. He's going to be around for a long time, right? He just got married. Congratulations on that, too. Beautiful, beautiful wife. Thanks as well to Congressman John James. Where's John James? Is he here? Hi, John. How are you? It's a star, young star. I knew that 5 years ago, right, John? I sort of predicted it. And I'm really proud to say that we now have more black Republicans serving in the U.S. House than at any time since 1870. That's a long time, 1870. So thank you very much. And Scott, you're going to be fantastic. I'll tell you, you're going to do a great job. As you know, the Americans are going to be celebrating something very important coming up, our 250th anniversary, our nation's founding. And when we do, we're going to look forward to honoring the contributions of countless black Americans who fought to win and protect and expand American freedom from the very, very beginning. And some of my good friends are here today, and I appreciate you being. I'm not going to call out your names because Tiger will get very bored. He'll say, this is a little boring. This is a little boring if we do that. But I want to thank you all for being here. You are our friends, and we appreciate this. And you, McGee, you are my friend. The last administration tried to reduce all of American history to a single year, 1619. But under our administration, we honor the indispensable role black Americans have always played in the immortal cause of another date, 1776. We like 1776. In the very first skirmish of the Revolutionary War at Lexington Green, an enslaved black man named Prince Estabrook, you know Prince Estabrook? Yeah. Answered history's call and fought as the Minutemen alongside the other patriots of the very small Massachusetts town. Couldn't protect itself, but they did a good job. Prince was wounded in the early morning battle, becoming not only the first African-American soldier to fight in the Revolution, but among the very first Americans to spill their blood. One of the first in the nation to spill blood in that very, very tough time. Soon Estabrook joined the Continental Army and ultimately won his own freedom along with that of his fellow Americans. His legacy will endure, and we're very proud to honor him today. It's a very important day in our country, and we honor him. First person to spill blood happened to be Tim Estabrook. Today, I'm pleased to announce that we will be including the statue of Prince Estabrook in our new National Garden of American Heroes. We're going to be doing a Garden of American Heroes. And now that I think of it, I must tell you, sadly, most of them, I guess all of them are not with us any longer. I was going to put Tiger in the garden, but maybe you don't want to be there. I maybe should wait a little bit, huh? Like about 50, I think I'm going to wait about 50 years, all right? But Tiger's going to make it, okay? But I'm a little afraid to tell him yes, because he'd be the only one that's living. I don't know, Tiger. Tiger's rejecting that offer, right? Under the executive order I signed last month, this new beautiful outdoor statue park. It's going to be a statue park. It's going to be unbelievable. We're picking the final sites now. It's between various states that want it very badly. We'll honor hundreds of our greatest Americans to ever live, including countless black Americans, icons. The garden will predominantly feature incredible women like Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, Billie Holiday, Aretha Franklin, and Coretta Scott King. And I will showcase it will be something very extraordinary. It's going to be producing, we're going to produce some of the most beautiful works of art in the form of a statue for men like Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, Jackie Robinson, what a great athlete that was, Martin Luther King Jr., Muhammad Ali, he's not a bad athlete. What do you think, Muhammad? Not too bad. And the late Kobe Bryant. People love Kobe Bryant. And we're going to save Tiger Woods for another time. That's all that I can. I'm sorry. During Black History Month, we pay tribute to these heroes and to so many others, but not simply because they're black heroes, but also because they are truly American heroes who inspire all of us, very much so. The theme of this year's celebration is African Americans and labor, and we want to thank all of the black workers, construction workers, and every other worker. They do a job like nobody can do, and we want to just thank them very much for their contribution. Tim, The contribution you've made, Tim, is incredible. Opportunity Zone, so many people, so many. He's the father of Opportunity Zone. I'm just the son. He's the father because he came into the White House, the Oval Office, with this idea. And it's probably the #1 economic development project ever in our country. And I want to give Senator Tim Scott the credit for it. Good job, Tim. Of course, millions of blacks were first brought here in slavery, and they were kept in that evil condition for really generations. But because of the steadfast faith and courage of so many patriots of all colors, we abolished that horrific institution, expanded civil rights, and advanced America's destiny as one nation under God with liberty and justice for all. Just a few months ago, the people in this room and millions of other black Americans played their own part in the American story when you went to the voting booths and restored a nice, good, solid government. And there's a guy that really helped. There's a man that really helped. You really are great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I don't forget. I'm proud to say that we received, listen to this, more votes from black Americans than any Republican president ever. Not even close. Almost 40% of the vote. Now, I won't be happy the next time. Should I run again? You tell me. There's your controversy right there. There's your controversy. Thank you. You'll be seeing that on you're gonna see that tonight, Tim, on television. I want to thank just a few of the people who are with us today, and these are great friends of ours. Alveda King. Alveda, where are you, Alveda? Hi, Alveda. Thank you. You've been with me from day one, and I appreciate it. I won't forget it. She's a fantastic woman. Alice Johnson. Where's Alice? Boy, are you incredible. I watched you on last night on television. You were so good. You know, Alice was in prison for doing something that today probably wouldn't even be prosecuted. She spent 22 years in prison, 22 years. She had another 22 years left. Can you believe it? And I pardoned her, and it was one of the best pardons. One of the best pardons. You know what she was on? She happened to be on the wrong telephone line. Is that true? She was on a telephone call, and I'm not saying it was perfect, but it wasn't worth 40 or 50 years, Alice. And you've been an inspiration to people. And we're going to be listening to your recommendation on pardons. You're going to go over, and she's going to be my pardon czar, okay? And you're going to find people just like you that should not have happened. It should not have happened. So you're going to look and you're going to make recommendations, and I'll follow those recommendations, okay, for pardons, all right? Thank you very much. A man who's just incredible. This guy, I watched him when he was a Democrat, and then one day he had to change because he couldn't take it any longer. And did anyone ever hear of a man named Leo 2.0 Terrell? Where are you? Get up here. I love this guy. You know what he's doing now? He's with the Department of Justice. He's in charge of civil rights and lots of other great things. He's going to be working with Pam. It's okay. Could he come up, please? Come on, Leo. Get up here. Leo 2.0. This guy is great. Hello, man. Thank you. Congratulations, huh? You are the greatest. Thank you.
I just want to say we are in the presence of the greatest president of all time. He is the greatest president in our lifetime. And I'll tell you right now, the Democratic Party should be worried because they took us for granted. No longer. We vote in our best interest. We want the same thing that every American wants. Good job. We want a secure border. We want to pay lower taxes, and Mr. President Donald Trump is doing that. Thank you, Mr. President.
He's a great guy. No, I watched him. He was a radical Democrat. He became a radical Republican, right? He's great. He's in the Department of Justice. Think of it, doing very important work at highest level. Also, Sage Steele. Sage, where are you? Hello, Sage. Great job you do. You're doing great. Thank you very much, Sage, for being here. Michael, Harry O. Harris. Michael. Hi, Michael. Thank you very much, Michael. Deontay Johnson. Deontay. Thank you, Deontay. Lynn Patton. She's worked for me for a long time. Lynn, she's worked for us for a long time. Bob Woodson. Where's Bob? And we're also joined by 7-time Mr. Olympia. I want to see this guy. Phil Heath. Where's Phil? Phil Heath. I don't want to compare my muscles. Here he is. Thank you, Phil, very much. I appreciate it. Will you come up here for a second? Come on, get up. I got to say, come on, you. From day one, right? From day one, he's been here. Get up. You got to say just a word. Don't fall. If you fall, it's all over. Tiger, you're not allowed to fall. You know, you can make a great speech, but if you fall going up, that's no good. Come on.
Wow. Are you kidding me? Mr. President, it has been an honor of a lifetime to support you, to try to wake up as many people to the lies of the Democrat Party and the nonstop manipulation of the mainstream media. That's why I now have my show on Newsmax, so I can champion you. And I'm thankful that we've been able to champion him and get him across the finish lines for another amazing 4 years. And let me say, I know God has chose you. He anointed you for this position. He kept you alive so you could be here today. And we prayed for that. We prayed for you. We continue to pray for you. And we're thankful for your service and your sacrifice. Mr. President Donald J. Trump, honor. God bless you.
From day one. I like those guys from day one. Tiger's been there from day one, too. Let me tell you, this guy is amazing. In 4 weeks, our new administration has achieved more than most administrations achieve in 4 years. We brought our country back. It's 4 weeks. Today is our 4th week. It's the end of the week. We are now starting our 5th, and I think we've done more in 4 weeks. Well, certainly than the last administration did in 4 years. They actually went negative. They actually went in the wrong direction. Together, we're going to be fighting long and hard for Black Americans and all Americans. We're going to be fighting for all Americans. We've secured our border, and we're stopping the invasion of our country. You know, our border right now is more secure than it's ever been. And we had the record. 4 years ago, we had the record. We had the lowest number in history, and now the numbers, Tim, are even lower than they were then. And we're honored. We're allowing people to come in from all over the world, from prisons and jails, mental institutions, insane asylums, gang members. They had drug dealers. They had everybody dropping in. And we had this ridiculous open border policy. They drop in. And I'll tell you, the people that were affected the most were Black people. You were affected the most in terms of the crime, in terms of the drugs and everything else. And we have the border shut down. We allow people to come in. We want people to come in, Tim, but we want them to come in legally. They're going to come through legally. So we're protecting American workers, including millions of Black workers, and we have a thing called reciprocal tariffs. If they charge us, we charge them. This is opening up. We just signed the bill, and we're going to take in billions and billions of dollars, and we're making our country very healthy again and very rich again. We want to be very rich again. We've been taken advantage by everybody, and you've been watching Doge, where we found billions, tens of billions of dollars of fraud and waste and abuse, and that's just the beginning. And Elon Musk has done an amazing job, I have to tell you. Him and his super geniuses, you know, these are seriously high IQ people, and nobody's going to talk them out of anything. They go in and they're finding billions. I mean, literally tens of billions of dollars that we just started, and I think that's going to have a big, big impact, Brooke, right? So we want to just really say, and I have to say to you, I look at this turnout, I look at the love in the room. This is just love in the room. And I remember the first time I did this, my first administration, one of my first meetings, there wasn't this large a crowd, Tiger. We had about 5 people in the front. We had maybe five 5 black people right in the front, right about there. I said, is anybody else coming? Is this it? Are we open? I don't even think Tim Scott, I know Turner wasn't there. I don't think Tim Scott was there either. I'm not sure. But that's all changed. And we got the highest vote. And one of the big reasons I'm president today is because of the black vote. And I always appreciate it. So this is a very special time. It's Black History Month. We love you all. We're going to work with you. We're going to make America greater than ever before. We're going to do it together. And I want to thank you all for being here. It's an incredible honor. And to my great golfing friends, I want to thank them in particular because they really are. They make a lot of money. They don't have to be up here with me. Tiger doesn't have to be here. Adam doesn't have to. They don't need this. But they love you and they love our country. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you.
And you were just watching President Donald Trump honoring Black History Month at the White House. Coming up after the break, China and Canada are both expressing concerns over U.S. tariffs, and a country in its own way is letting President Trump know its opinion. That and more when we come back.
I go by Jackie. I'm 44 years old. I had 3 kids at the time and single mother. I was working 60 hours a week. Still couldn't pay the bills. Skipped meals so that they could eat. It's been hard because one thing falls into place, 10 things fall out of place. You know, I just can't do this alone and make it work.
1 in 5 children face hunger in America, and food costs are rising. But everyone needs nourishing food to thrive, and they can when we work together so our neighbors can feed their families. Call or go online right now to join Feeding America with your gift of just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day. Together, thanks to a nationwide network of food banks, dedicated volunteers, and the monthly support of people like you, we can fill plates with nutritious food for families across America.
One day my mother came over to my house and said, "There's a meeting at the pantry." I said, "Okay." And I went. There were some ladies in there. They were from the food bank. They asked several questions. Some of those were about me and my story, but it helped me to open up a little bit.
We're getting closer to the day when no one in America faces hunger, but we can't do it without you. Call or go online now. Visit helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day. 98% of donations go directly to help millions of people facing hunger, from coast to coast and in your own community. And when you give by credit card, we'll send you this exclusive canvas grocery bag to show you are a part of a movement of supporters working together to help end hunger.
I have people that I can trust. I have hope.
Please call now or make your monthly donation at helpfeedingamerica.org, and your gift can double in impact.
Divinely inspired traditional oil painting inspires compassion. Artwork created in truth and beauty illuminates a path to goodness. Rediscover traditional art, revive classical culture. We warmly invite oil painters from around the world to participate in the 7th NTD International Figure Painting Competition, a celebration of classical realism. Please visit oilpainting.ntdtv.com.
There's always a searching process for beauty. You know it when you see it.
And it's time for today's Business Matters. Delta is offering $30,000 to passengers who were on board the plane that flipped over in Toronto. A Delta spokesperson said the payment offer is a good faith gesture with no strings attached. There were 76 passengers and 4 crew members aboard the flight when it crashed during landing and overturned on Monday. Now, videos showing the plane hitting the ground hard, bursting into flames, then skidding along the tarmac and flipping over. The crash left passengers who were actually buckled into their seats, dangling upside down. Toronto Pearson Airport said none of the passengers were critically injured in the crash, which authorities are still investigating. And shoppers flooded to Walmart for groceries and clothing last year, but now the retail giant is warning of a slower 2025. Walmart is the largest retailer in the United States and a bellwether for consumer spending. Walmart said today its sales and profit growth are expected to decrease this year, partly due to inflation ticking back up and President Trump's tariffs. Walmart's projected outlook is a signal for the rest of the retail industry that 2025 will be a rockier year. Consumer prices rose 0.5 percentage point last month from December, and that's the fastest pace in more than a year. Meanwhile, drug maker Eli Lilly is going big on slimming down. Financial statements show the company has recorded nearly $550 million in pre-launch inventory, and this is for its experimental oral weight loss drug. This is an unusual move. That's because Eli Lilly is stocking up more than a year before the drug is expected to be launched. And the drug still has to report data from its late-stage trial that's expected to be by April. In its mid-stage trial, the highest dose led to about 15% weight loss after 36 weeks for people who were obese or overweight. Right now, Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk dominate the weight loss treatment market. And Starbucks' new CEO is refining the coffee chain. Brian Niccol told the Wall Street Journal that Starbucks bet too hard on mobile and drive-through services, and it has not paid off. He says the company should have focused on customer experience, and he is bringing back the comfortable coffee house vibe. Former CEO Howard Schultz said its mobile app became the primary place to order, and at the same time, the primary pain point for dissatisfaction. And this is clear in past earnings reports. Last year, the company said between 1 in 7 or 8 customers left their order because of how busy the Starbucks was. Former Vice President Kamala Harris has signed on with one of Hollywood's top talent agencies. Creative Artists Agency announced the deal on social media Wednesday. The agency says it will represent Harris in all areas, but will focus on speaking engagements and publishing. CAA also says it will work with the former Democratic presidential nominee on her post-White House initiatives. The agency also represents former Presidents Joe Biden and Barack Obama. Netflix is beefing up the streaming wars in Mexico. Its CEO announced that the entertainment giant will invest $1 billion to produce films and TV series there over the next 4 years. Ted Sarandos said he looked forward to entering more partnerships with producers in the Latin American nation. The Hollywood Reporter says Netflix also plans to invest $2 million to the storied Churubusco Studios. Netflix has been cementing itself in the country. Its service first became available in Mexico in 2011. The company produced its first series outside the U.S. in Mexico and set up its Latin American headquarters in Mexico in 2019. An unlikely pairing. U.S. oil and biofuel groups have teamed up. They have banded together to urge the Trump administration to increase volumes of renewable fuels required to be blended into the nation's fuel mix next year and beyond. Oil and biofuel industries have historically been at odds on issues related to the Renewable Fuel Standard program. The law requires refiners to blend biofuels into fuels like gas or buy credits from those that do. Both industries have aligned, though, in their opposition to electric vehicles, which threaten liquid fuel. The chief executive of Spanish oil company Repsol said he expects President Trump's energy policies will have a positive impact on the gas industry, including increased output and lower prices. Repsol produces gas in the United States. The CEO said increased supply will help bring gas prices down globally, thereby aiding European heavy industry. Trump ordered a lifting of the freeze on liquefied natural gas export approvals the day he started his second presidential term. Former President Biden had paused the issue of new licenses early last year. The U.S. is trying to increase its gas exports to help reduce Europe's dependency on Russian gas. And automaker Stellantis is taking the wheel on self-driving technology. The company has unveiled STLA AutoDrive, its first in-house developed automated driving system. Stellantis says it's a hands-free and eyes-free feature. It can take over in stop-and-go commuting at speeds up to 37 miles per hour. The system will notify drivers when the feature is available and is activated with a physical button. AutoDrive will then adjust speed and manage steering and braking. The maker of Jeep and Ram said that future updates will be available and able to handle higher speeds of up to 59 miles per hour and even off-roading. Stellantis said AutoDrive is ready for deployment. Value over volume. Mercedes-Benz has announced more cost-cutting. It also plans to pivot toward gas and diesel cars in its new product lines after its battery electric car sales collapsed by a quarter last year. Now, most of the new combustion models will be in its top-end price tier. This is a sign the car maker is still committed to its strategy to sell a lower volume of higher-margin vehicles. The German luxury car maker is trying to revive margins as the company braces for a sharp drop in earnings this year. Earnings last year slumped 30%. The return on its car division this year is expected to be around 6 to 8%. A report from JD Power and Global Data says new vehicle retail sales in the U.S. are expected to rise 8.1% to 1.01 million units in February on an adjusted basis. But the rise in sales is not enough to offset the decline in total profit per unit for retailers, which is projected to be down 11.8% from a year earlier. So despite discounts from manufacturers and higher sales volumes, rising dealer inventories and increased competition have pressured profitability for retailers. The average retail transaction price for new vehicles has been high and is up $71 from February 2024. Would the proposed Doge dividend add to inflation? A potential $5,000 check going to every American. Here's more.
We give 20% of the Doge savings to American citizens.
The Doge dividend, a potential $5,000 check to every American.
A check saying that the federal government misused your funds. Now it's time to refund those tax payments back to the people.
It all started with this X post featuring fund manager James Fishback. Elon Musk replied in the comments, "We'll check with the president."
$520 million for a consultant. I want to know, who is that consultant? To do ESG, that's environmental, social, and governance investments in Africa.
Fishback's idea is that taxpayer money has been wasted and now 20% needs to be returned to them. He argues this would incentivize taxpayers to help look for more waste, fraud, and abuse.
If you're seeing things that are wrong and egregious and wasteful and abusive and fraudulent, now you have every incentive to call that out. And that's what the Doge dividend does.
The more they find, the bigger their checks. Though handing out checks could add to inflation.
What that's doing is just throwing more gas on that fire. It's just inflating the currency that much more.
Financial advisor Eric Alexander says inflation happens when there are too many dollars, making each dollar worth slightly less.
I don't think it will be that inflationary.
Finance professor Michael Busler says he believes the Doge dividend would add to inflation, but the amount would be negligible.
Now consumers with that will be able to buy things that they may not have been able to buy. Therefore, that'll keep the economy from slowing down and probably will increase economic growth.
Busler says many people are doing very poorly because of past inflation. He says the Doge dividend would help them buy necessities they previously couldn't, as opposed to buying a lot more in general.
And Microsoft says it has created a new chip that shows quantum computing is much closer than recently believed. Quantum computers hold the promise of carrying out calculations that would take today's systems millions of years. But the fundamental building block of quantum computers, called a qubit, is extremely difficult to control and is prone to errors. Microsoft says its Majorana 1 chip is less prone to those errors than rivals. The chip has been in the works for nearly 2 decades and has a new type of material. Next, Chipotle Mexican Grill says it's preparing for what it calls burrito season. So to that end, the chain says it's hiring 20,000 more workers. Chipotle says it sees a surge in demand from March to May, making it the busiest time of the year for its restaurants. Revenue rose more than 18% in the second quarter of last year. The company attributes that to its popular burrito bowl, as well as increased demand in warmer months. Demand overall has been stable in spite of diners' concerns about inflation and static wages. Chipotle operates more than 3,700 restaurants in the U.S. United States tariff policy is proving to be a thorn in the side of some countries, most notably China and Canada. Both countries are expressing their own style of disdain and retaliation. NTD Sean Marshall has more information.
China is concerned about the reciprocal tariffs put forth by the United States. China is urging the U.S. not to, quote, arbitrarily wave the tariff stick for coercion. These are the words of the Ministry of Commerce spokesperson at a press conference in Beijing on Thursday.
China has noted that the United States has recently announced it has implemented so-called reciprocal tariffs on all trading partners. China is deeply concerned about this. International trade is based on each country's own resource endowments and comparative advantages to effectively promote global economic development and improve the well-being of the people all over the world.
He made the remarks in response to a media query about a memorandum U.S. President Donald Trump signed on February 13th, directing his administration to determine the equivalent of a reciprocal tariff with respect to each foreign trading partner. Canadian citizens and officials have recently been expressing concern over American tariff policies in their own ways. Canadians have canceled trips south of the border, boycotted U.S. alcohol and other products, and even booed at sporting events after President Trump announced 25% tariffs on most of Canada's goods on Saturday. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has announced their own retaliatory tariffs on $107 billion of U.S. goods.
The fundamental truth of this all is we don't want to be here. No one wants to be here. This is completely unavoidable, yet we are here and we are going to respond. We are not, I think, for some people in the U.S., perhaps Donald Trump, they took our kindness for weakness. And we do love our American cousins, but we will not stand by for this type of action to be taken, and we will respond every single time that they take an action. We will respond in kind.
Trudeau also encouraged Canadians to buy local and vacation in Canada, a sentiment echoed by many local officials. Ontario Premier Doug Ford ordered American-made liquor to be off the shelves of the Provincial Controlled Liquor Control Board of Ontario, the only alcohol wholesaler in Canada's most populous province. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
Hasbro has laid out a $1 billion cost savings plan as the U.S. toy maker navigates subdued demand for its products. In its new strategic plan, Hasbro will also target an average of mid-single-digit revenue growth and 50 to 100 basis points of annual operating profit margin improvement through 2027. Now, rival Mattel earlier this month forecast annual profit above estimates and warned of price hikes following tariffs. Hasbro's CFO said the company is trying to move the current 50% of U.S. toy and game volume originating in China to under 40% of the next 2 years. Unlike in the first Trump administration, toys are not expected to be excluded from the latest tariffs. The Swiss government says American tourists helped the Swiss hotel industry reach a record number of overnight stays in 2024. The stronger dollar and inflation abroad made alpine trips more attractive. The sector has struggled in recent years with the lack of snow and the pandemic shutdown. The influx of transatlantic travelers last year helped. The number of overnight stays in Switzerland rose to a record 42.8 million in 2024, with a 14% rise in stays from U.S. travelers. Switzerland was seen as a less expensive travel option for Americans due to inflation here in the U.S. Tourism supports over 167,000 full-time jobs in the country and nearly 3% of Swiss gross domestic product. Switzerland Tourism said American tourists came mainly for the mountains. Spring break is coming for millions of students, and AAA has compiled a list of the top destinations travelers are booking. The time-honored tradition of heading to the Sunshine State is continuing. Orlando, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, and Tampa all made the top 10. Some people looking for an urban experience more than escaping the cold are heading to Chicago and New York. And if you're going overseas, no real surprises there either. Top destinations include Rome, London, Paris, Barcelona, and Madrid. But for those who are flying, it's going to cost. The average price for a spring break domestic ticket is $820, and for international travel, more than $1,400. Okay, on to markets now. U.S. stocks sold off today as ongoing tariff jitters and a downbeat forecast from Walmart. Those dampened investor risk appetite. Now, a broad sell-off pulled all three major U.S. stock indexes into negative territory, as you can see right here. And with the blue chip Dow suffering the steepest loss, S&P 500 snapped its two-day string of all-time closing highs. So gold prices actually surged to a record high, suggesting that a flight to safety amid mounting uncertainties. And Walmart, as I mentioned earlier, the world's largest retailer, provided current fiscal year sales and profit forecasts that fell shy of Anna's expectations, which potentially is suggesting dampening consumer demand. And that's it for today's Business Matters. Next, the U.S. needs to build more ships to achieve its long-term readiness goal, according to the U.S. Navy. The problem is the U.S. shipbuilding industry is basically defunct, according to multinational banker ING Group. The U.S. needs a solution urgently because China is rapidly expanding its Navy. Our data reporter Kevin Hogan has the number on this. Kevin, how many ships does the U.S. need? And is China Navy catching up to the U.S.? And what are some solutions to help the U.S. meet its goal?
Well, in assessing the U.S. Navy readiness, the Center for Strategic and International Studies says that without a big, powerful U.S. Navy, China will be more aggressive to its smaller neighbors, and it can project more power, and it won't be deterred simply by the presence of U.S. ships. So that said, what is the status of the U.S. Navy right now? Well, the current number of U.S. battle force ships is about 300. So that's where we're at right now. Well, what does the Navy need in the coming decades? Well, look at this. That's about 380 some ships. That's a shortfall there, but they have time to make it up. But the problem is that even though that's 80 more ships they have to add to their fleet, you retire ships. So they actually have to add 260 ships to reach that goal. So that's over about 25, 30 years, right? So can the United States actually do it? I mean, that's $1 trillion, but do they have the actual infrastructure to do it? Look at this. So these are the number of ships built in tons in the United States, right? Over the last decade, you go from 2014 to about 2022 right here. So if you're at today's production, that's just not going to cut it, really, just realistically speaking. And if you're going to average all this out, that might just barely get you to that threshold where you can build that many ships, right? So now, this is all according to the UN, the stats that they provided, right? But now, again, this is the Navy's requirement. What do they need? They need about 4 million tons of ships built. And again, this is over 25 years. But if you look at what the U.S. military is building right now, their current rate, they're only going to build about 1.5 million, maybe, tons of ships in those 25 years. That's just not enough. Look, you got to do like 2 or 3 times that to achieve what the Navy says they need. Now, if you say, well, wait a minute, what if you just add the commercial ships in? Well, about 20% of U.S. shipbuilding is commercial. So even if you said, you know what, don't even build any more commercial ships, just make it entirely Navy, you're still at a huge shortfall, right? And again, that's with that current 2024 data. If you average out the last decade, this might bump up closer to the need, but right now, it's just simply not cutting it, right? So now let's talk about China's fleet size, right? So we're going to look at the United States. All right, so, from 2000 to 2020, it's been pretty steady. What's it projected to be based on the Office of Naval Intelligence? Well, it's going to basically just grow a little bit, but it's pretty steady. But China, look at this. They had a rapid rise. They actually overtook the United States in number of ships. So numerically, they had the biggest Navy in the world, and that was back in about 2015. But look at that projection. That gap is basically expected to double, 2 times that gap, about 2040, right? So you might imagine, well, okay, so maybe China just builds smaller ships. Is that what's happening? Well, let's see. So you go on and you look at some of this data from a different angle. Now you're talking about the tons of ships. Look at this. U.S., again, kind of level. All right, U.S. projections, it's pretty level, right? But China, look at this, and a rapid expansion there in that decade, 2010 to 2020, right? And now look at their projections. You see they're closing that gap. It's not hard to see that if you just extended that out, you're talking basically in about 2050, you're going to see that they're basically going to overtake the Navy, the United States Navy, and that's in the total tonnage, right? So what about the capabilities for both these countries to build ships? Okay, let's take a look at that data. Here you're seeing what the Office of Naval Intelligence shows. Look at that, one ship down there, that's 100,000 tons each ship. China has way more shipbuilding capacity. That is 230 times the United States, 232 times, right? So that's a massive increase that they have. And that's just real data now. That might include some of these commercial ships, but what does the CCP do? Well, they say any commercial ships after 2015 have to meet military grade standards. So CCP could just nationalize all that ships and start putting tanks or troops on them if they needed to, right? So now look at that. So that's just the commercial shipbuilding plus the naval shipbuilding. Okay, now what about the ships built over time? Let's look at that data right here. Okay, so the United States, it's basically flatlined. They're really not, they're like you said, the shipbuilding industry is defunct. It's just 0.1 million or something. It's not much at all. China, look at that. That's the world's leader. This is 51% of all the world's shipbuilding, just one country alone. That's China right there, right? So they have a severe advantage in the number of ships that are able to be built. Now, where are the ships built? Well, look at this. I mean, you talk about the large shipyards, right, where you build aircraft carriers, maybe frigates, right? Well, the United States, they have about 7, but China, look at this. You're talking 20 major shipyards. Okay, so let's move on. Now, what about dry docks? Because dry docks are extremely important because you have to service all those ships. U.S., it's sitting right there, about 20 or so, and then boom, just under 20. And then China, 140. So they're way overtaking the United States in dry docks because, again, if you have a prolonged conflict, you're going to need to get those ships in for repairs and so on. Now, why is it also important to have a lot of dry docks that the United States just doesn't have in comparison to China? Well, look at this. It's because the U.S. military, the Navy, is 20 years behind in maintaining their ships. So that's a massive backlog, right? Now, this is, again, a big problem. What are some solutions? Well, Senator Mike Lee, Republican of Utah, he introduced the Ensuring Naval Readiness Act. What does that do? That allows NATO countries and Indo-Pacific countries that the United States has a defense pact with, like Korea, for example, South Korea, that would be able to build U.S. ships because they can't, by law, do that right now, right? So let's look at some comparisons. Look at this. South Korea and Japan, 2 major U.S. allies in the Indo-Pacific, they have huge shipbuilding industries, as you can see right there. And now you say, okay, well, if we the United States contracted to South Korea, you could build a Sejong destroyer that's similar to Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, half the price, 3 times faster. And then if you went with one of the Danish models, you're looking at these guided missile frigates. That's about 1/3 the cost, $355 million to $1 billion that the United States for these upcoming models has. So is that a good idea? Well, you need to have a good shipbuilding industry, but maybe this is a short-term stopgap measure. Back to you.
Okay, thanks, Kevin, for that. And as well, thank you for watching NTD Newsroom. That's all we have for you today. And be sure to stay tuned for NTD Evening News at 6 p.m. Eastern Time and 3 p.m. Pacific.